81. Fly into the sky, the light of diamonds. Chapter 81. Flying into the clouds, diamond light. Ciel burst out of the charms classroom and was gone in an instant. But what had happened in that lesson didn't disappear with him. If anything, it spread through Hogwarts like wildfire. The castle was a small world. The slightest disturbance set all four houses chattering. Halloween's events were still the hottest topic, and now this new incident only added fuel. Only this time, no one was talking about Ciel having giant blood anymore. Instead, voices in the corridors gleefully asked Malfoy, "Who's the half-giant now?" Malfoy felt humiliated and avoided everyone. He slunk back to Slytherin, and it was said didn't even stay in the common room, locking himself in his dormitory and refusing to come out. For the moment, at least, he'd quiet down and cause less trouble. In Hagrid's hut, Harry and Ron sat by the stove, nearly coughing with laughter as they retold the incident. "Hagrid," Ron said, "we're just gutted we didn't see it." "To Miss Malfoy's crestfallen face, priceless," Harry added. Hagrid wore an odd, anxious expression. "Oh, right. What about that boy? Ciel Sprout, isn't it? How is he?" Ron asked casually, but his curiosity was obvious. Harry and Ron glanced at each other. Hagrid tried to hide his concern for Ciel, but he was about as subtle as an open book. Harry thought back to his brief encounters with Ciel and answered, "He's a proper Hufflepuff, I suppose. Outside class, he likes planting trees, spends most of his time in the greenhouses. He helps Professor Snape with potion ingredients, too," Ron said. "In short, he's hardworking and quiet." "That Malfoy's been saying he's useless, but Ciel's actually brilliant," Harry went on. "He's as good as Hermione," Ron grinned, "and his personality's even nicer." Hagrid beamed as if the praise were for himself. Harry couldn't help noticing how obvious Hagrid's worry was, so he pushed it. "Hagrid, what is it? You've been acting weird about Ciel." Hagrid flushed and stammered. Well, he might have the same blood I do, or at least be related somehow. Headmaster Dumbledore gave me that troll that got into the castle on Halloween, beat the poor thing into a state like nothing I'd ever seen. Even I'd have trouble with something like that. Only giant blood could do that." He blinked back tears. "You all know I'm half giant. I thought I'd be the only one in the world. I wouldn't tell anyone normally, but I can't help thinking Ciel might have giant blood too. I was wondering, could you invite him over for a cup of tea or something?" Harry and Ron exchanged looks. They weren't close to Ciel. Last time Harry had invited him to help defend Hogwarts, Ciel had refused. Still, Hagrid looked so pitiful they agreed. "All right, we'll try to invite him." After leaving Hagrid's hut, Harry and Ron looked around in bewilderment. Ciel's here 1 minute and gone the next. Where does he even go? Away from the castle, Ciel held an elber tree sapling, while Professor Sprout explained how to plant the rare, nearly extinct tree. "It's simple enough," she said. "You must plant an elber tree in a cloud layer 2,000 feet or more above the ground. Once rooted, it fixes itself to that cloud cluster, draws in more clouds, and can form a whole new cloud layer with the tree hidden inside." Even as the herbology professor, Sprout spoke with bright enthusiasm and a trace of regret. When the levitation charm was new, the elber tree wasn't rare, though it was always uncommon. But cloud pollution worsened, and in the last 200 years, many clouds have darkened. Elber trees sent into polluted clouds couldn't take root. Now they're endangered. She looked toward the clouds near Hogwarts with hopeful eyes. "Luckily, we don't have that problem here. If you find a clean, high cloud cluster and plant it, the tree can grow fine. You should be able to reach it with your flying, Ciel, yes?" Ciel nodded. He was a good flyer, and with the Quidditch practice he'd been doing recently, finding a cloud layer wouldn't be hard. But planting in a low cloud would only yield a bronze-level reward once the tree matured, useful, but far below the elber tree's potential. He had only one sapling and wanted to maximize it. So, though he didn't like taking risks, he decided to plant it as high as possible. As he considered how to do that without Professor Sprout noticing, a silver phoenix flew by, Dumbledore's Patronus, and the headmaster's voice spoke through it. "Pomona, come to my office. It's about that item." Sprout's face shifted and she turned to Ciel. "The headmaster needs me. You plant the elber tree yourself. With your herbology knowledge, you'll be fine, but don't fly too high." Ciel nodded and watched her leave until she was out of sight. He let out a quiet breath. Aunt Pomona's always on my case. One little bit of rebellion won't make her angry, right? He looked at the sapling in its bottle and squared his shoulders. Forget it. I'll plant it now. He swung onto his ready Nimbus 2000 and pushed off. The broom shot upward. Everything around him shrank as speed increased. The acceleration pressed him back, but Ciel's face didn't change. His eyes never left the sapling. 100 meters, 200, 500, 1,000. In a flash, he reached the minimum planting height. A small line of text hovered over the sapling, changing as he climbed. After the elber tree matures, Reward 1 can be obtained. Flying ability enhancement. Levitation charm efficiency slightly improved, bronze level. The bronze glow was richer than usual, but Ciel wanted more. He yanked the broom upward. 1,500, 2,000 meters. The air cooled. Britain was already cold, and now the temperature fell below freezing, but Ciel's legendary vitality kept him warm. The sapling, however, seemed livelier. The flying ability reward flashed gold, and the levitation charm reward gleamed silver. It was the best bronze-to-gold display he'd seen, but it still wasn't enough. While there was still breathable air, he inhaled deeply and climbed higher. 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 meters, he crashed into a cloud layer. Ice formed on the broom's shaft. The broom became heavy and sluggish. It took him a long time to fight up to nearly 6,000 meters. A line of platinum light suddenly lit up on the sapling, in addition to gold. 1 platinum, 1 gold reward. Ciel felt his heart stir. Should he stop? He shook his head. He could feel there was more to be gained. He drew his wand, an ash wand, and despite the cold and thin air, cast a levitation charm on the broom. Wingardium Leviosa! The broom's sudden lightness made it shake violently as turbulence took hold. Facing turbulent air currents, its stability collapsed. The world rocked and wavered. Most people would have been sick or passed out, but Ciel's notorious balance held him steady. Keep climbing, he told himself. Leave the rest to me. The Nimbus 2000 seemed to understand and accelerated upward. 7,000, 8,000, then 12,000 meters. Civilian aircraft seldom reach such heights, but the broom pressed on. At that altitude, the sapling's reward display finally stabilized. Ciel read the last line and felt, almost, like he could breathe again even in the thin air. A clear, translucent, diamond-like light, the diamond-level reward, had appeared. Diamond-level reward. It had really happened. Chapter 82, Ancient Magic, Loss of Control, Legendary Life. At that moment, in Charles' line of sight, the reward readout on the elber tree changed drastically. Greatly enhanced flying ability, diamond grade. Significantly enhanced levitation charm deduction ability, platinum grade. Compared to before, this was a qualitative leap. From Charles' experience, diamond grade abilities were something most people never achieved in a lifetime. To possess one was to be an expert. Diamond-level flying might even qualify someone for a professional Quidditch team. And a platinum upgrade to his levitation charm deduction ability would be a huge step toward the triple spell combination Charles had been planning. Wingardium Leviosa, Levicorpus, and Liberacorpus. These rewards alone made the cloud-bound excursion feel worthwhile. Then a black iron glow appeared among the rewards. Charles only glanced at it at first, but his expression changed to surprise the next moment. Extremely faint perception of ancient weather magic, black iron grade. Ancient weather magic? Charles had a rough idea what weather magic meant. From Newt Scamander's enchanted suitcase, which used weather charms to maintain different climates for different creatures, to the Great Hall's ceiling that mirrored the sky. But he had never heard of ancient weather magic. Ancient magic in the wizarding world tended to be extraordinary. The Patronus charm was an ancient magic, and Lily's protective magic, born of love, was another. What might ancient weather magic be? Could it let a wizard call actual wind and rain, conjure thunderstorms like the legends? Charles' thoughts wandered, then he pushed them aside. The elber tree took at least half a year to grow from planting to maturity. He might not be able to harvest its rewards until well into his first year. Even if he could harvest it, one tree only granted a black iron grade perception of ancient weather magic. Real mastery would take years, propagation, grafting, too far off to worry about now. He carefully took the elber tree from the bottle. Preserved so long, It longed for the open sky. It floated toward the clouds on its own, tender roots piercing into the mist. A notification of successful planting flashed across Charles' system panel, and an extremely bright reward light pulsed in his vision. He relaxed. The tree would take a long time to mature. He wouldn't linger in the clouds. He turned his Nimbus 2000 and prepared to head back to Hogwarts. At that instant, the broom's magic ceased. The Nimbus 2000 lurched and then plunged like an arrow from 12,000 meters, carrying Charles down with terrifying speed. His face went serious. The Nimbus 2000's gone out of control? He glanced behind him. Ice crystals had formed on the broom's bristles, almost turning it into an ice sculpture. He'd flown far beyond the design limits. Even enchanted brooms weren't meant for such altitudes. Wizards riding brooms still had to contend with cold and thin air. No manufacturer had expected someone to push them this high. The over-limit stress had caused the broom to lose control. As the scenery spun and the altitude dropped rapidly, weightlessness and crushing G-forces alternated, producing accelerations that could cause internal injuries or instant death. Charles focused. If he hit the ground at that speed, even his legendary life ability might not save him. He started casting without pause. Wingardium Leviosa. Levicorpus. Wingardium Leviosa and Incarcerus were used almost without interruption, each spell shaving off a little of the fall's force. But the broom was out of control. Steering was impossible, and Charles' magical reserves were limited. The descent remained dangerously fast. He clenched his teeth. If this went on, he'd end up like Neville in the original story, battered and broken. A broken limb wasn't the worst thing, but Professor Sprout would confine him to the infirmary for recovery. She wouldn't let him out of bed for a week. What about his work? A new resolve flared. No, he told himself. A corporate slave must never lose his job. He cast Wingardium Leviosa again. This time, the downward force dropped twice over, far more than before. Charles glanced at his system panel. The levitation charm he'd previously had at bronze level had, in this short time, advanced to silver grade. The silver glow on Incarcerus had also intensified noticeably. Both charms had improved remarkably in the space of the fall. A flash of insight struck him. The constant alternation between overweight and weightlessness, the bizarre environment of the fall, must be excellent training for those spells. He didn't have time to think further. He concentrated on casting Wingardium Leviosa again and again. The upgraded charm slowed his fall enough that he stopped expecting broken bones. At worst, he'd make a human-shaped dent in the ground. No forced sick leave. Job saved. At the Quidditch pitch, the Gryffindor team was in the middle of brutal training. "Wood is insane," someone grumbled. "Ever since Harry saw the house team's last match, he's had us working like mad every day." They all wished for a reprieve. Harry, as Seeker, was thinking about Hagrid's invitation. How was he supposed to invite Charles for tea if he couldn't even find him? No one had seen Charles since the last class. It was as if he'd vanished. Then, Harry, looking up, saw a black dot in the sky spinning and coming closer, a lot larger than a golden snitch. He halted mid-practice and squinted. Wood snapped, annoyed. "Harry, why did you stop? Training can't stop. If we slack off, how will we beat Hufflepuff?" Before Harry could answer, the dark dot resolved into a person, Charles, riding a broom that was wildly out of control. Everyone watched in horror as he slammed into the ground, leaving a human-shaped dent. For a breathless second, they were frozen. Harry went pale. Wood was already about to call Madame Pomfrey. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance. Then Charles hauled himself up out of the dent. He cradled the Nimbus 2000 and checked it over. The broom was intact. He dusted himself off and, seeing the stunned faces of Harry and the Weasley twins, greeted them cheerfully. "Hello there. Sorry, flew too high. The broom went out of control. You guys keep training. Don't let me disturb you." The team members exchanged looks, swallowed, and turned to Wood. "Captain, who are we supposed to be beating again?" "Beat Hufflepuff," Wood began. "Me?" Charles asked, just as he was about to walk away. He paused, because something felt odd. There was an unusual warmth running through him, a gentle current under his skin. He looked puzzled. Internal bleeding? No, he didn't feel any such pain. If anything, he felt a touch better than usual. He checked his system panel. His eyes fixed on an ability he'd had for a long time. Life force enhancement. Legendary grade. There was no mistake. The blazing white indicator on that legendary grade ability had brightened slightly just as he fell. Chapter 83. Mythical Conditions. Punishment. Invitation. Watching the legendary life ability flicker and change, Ciel Sprout felt his chest swell. When he first stacked his vitality enhancement to the legendary level, he had wondered if it could ever reach mythical. But the gap between legendary and mythical had felt like an impassable chasm. No matter how much he ground, the meter wouldn't budge. Several rounds of reward harvesting had left legendary life unchanged. After years of fruitless effort, he'd accepted it, until this fall from a great height caused the ability to tick up, even if only imperceptibly. Even a tiny gain was something he hadn't seen in years. Ciel Sprout's mind raced. Could it be that advancing from legendary to mythical required more than stacking rewards, that it needed some external condition, impact, severe damage, or tempering? He allowed himself a laugh. Of course, the legends were never earned easily. Odin traded an eye for runic magic. Heracles endured 12 labors to win godhood. If mythic power required outside trials, it made sense that his legendary abilities would, too. Looking at the faintly brighter legendary life, he felt a surge of hope. The road might be long, but he would keep going. Grinding was never a problem. His satisfaction was cut short by a furious roar carrying across the Quidditch pitch. "Ciel Sprout, what have you done?" Hearing that voice, Ciel's blood went cold. "Professor Pomona Sprout?" She sounded terrified, no, furious. He had fallen into real trouble. Rewind a few minutes. In the headmaster's office, Dumbledore and Professor Sprout had been discussing the Philosopher's Stone and the castle's curriculum. "Devil's Snare is dangerous," Dumbledore said. "First-year wizards who don't know its weakness won't stand a chance." "You're right," Sprout replied. "Although it isn't strictly herbology for first years, we should find a way to teach them the weakness this term." They argued good-naturedly about budgets, Sprout nagging for greenhouse renovations, Dumbledore promising improvements eventually. Then Sprout grew serious. "Albus," she said, "have you heard of the talent enhancement potion?" Dumbledore's face tightened. "The one said to improve innate magical ability?" "Yes, I want to brew it for Ciel Sprout." "But many ingredients are likely extinct," Dumbledore warned. "I'll find them one by one," Pomona insisted. "If there's any hope, I'll gather every ingredient." Dumbledore looked to the cage where Fawkes sat. "Phoenix tears might help." Pomona brightened. "Fawkes is preparing for rebirth. Perhaps next year there will be fresh tears." "Then I will support it," Dumbledore said. "He's a hard worker and well-liked by the younger students." Pomona's gratitude showed. She silently tallied items in her head. "If I can get Phoenix tears and Margaret, we're close to 2 ingredients. I'll brew the talent enhancement potion for him." But before she could finish her planning, a dark figure flashed past the window. Ciel Sprout, spinning and falling. Pomona's face drained, then she was out of the office and racing to the pitch, a banshee of fury. On the Quidditch pitch, she unleashed a volley of scolding that rattled like machine gun fire. The Gryffindor first years trembled. They'd thought Professor McGonagall intimidating, but Pomona's anger was another thing entirely. Ciel kept his head down and stammered, "Professor, I'm fine. I know I was wrong." "You know you were wrong?" she demanded, eyes hard. "No, you don't. You'll do this again." She sucked in a breath. Merlin's beard. "If anything had happened to you, I don't think I could bear it." "So you must be punished," she said. "A severe punishment, one you will never forget." Harry and the others exchanged worried glances. What could Pomona mean by severe? For a brief, terrifying second, they pictured ancient, brutal punishments. Ciel bowed his head. He knew she was only frightened and angry. Pomona's voice went cold. "Ordinary punishments would be useless for you. I won't make you clean classrooms or polish trophies. That'd be a reward. Listen, for the next 7 days, the greenhouse is closed to you. You will not be allowed to work there. I'll also warn Professor Snape. If he tries to make you handle potion ingredients during those 7 days, he can forget about getting another herb from my greenhouse." Her expression softened only slightly. "Oh, almost forgot. I'm confiscating all your textbooks for the week. No studying. You must reflect on your mistakes." Harry and the other Gryffindors stared stunned. This sounded like the sort of punishment they'd gladly take. But Ciel's face went pale. "No, Professor, you can't. That's cruel," he protested. I need work and study. If I can't work, life has no meaning. If I can't study, what's the point? 1 day, 3 days, please? Pomona was unflinching. 7 days, not a day less. Now hand them over. With a mournful expression, Xiaor pulled out his textbooks, charms, herbology, and reluctantly handed them over. He tried to plead for one book. Can I keep History of Magic, Professor, please? She shook her head. Come on, Xiaor, don't think you can hide anything. Reluctantly, he produced the last book, Succubus Queen and Dragon Maid. His heart thudded. Inside it was the Sectum Sempra notation he'd been hiding. He feared she would find it. Instead, Pomona's eyes actually lightened. Not bad, she said approvingly. Finally, a decent book. You may keep this one. Read it carefully. The others will be returned in a week. Reflect on your behavior. She left still somewhat angry, but a small smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. The child is maturing. Maybe someday he'll help the Sprout family branch out. When she was gone, Xiaor exhaled. He'd managed to keep the Mixed Blood Prince textbook. Excellent. If she'd taken that one, the week would have been intolerable. Still, being barred from the greenhouse and potion work for 7 days dulled his mood. How would he get through an entire week without anything to cultivate? Harry walked over, eyes bright with envy. Xiaor, your treatment is too good. Xiaor, despairing, said, I really want to work and study. Truly. Suddenly, Harry's face lit up. He lowered his voice. Hagrid has a job for you. He's wanted to invite you for a while. Want it? Xiaor's eyes snapped open. If Hagrid needed help, perhaps it would be a chance to see the troll that had been sent to the Forbidden Forest last time. Or, better, some other magical creature. Goldfish Vine wasn't grown in the greenhouse. Maybe Hagrid had something out in the forest that could speed its cultivation. If he could use a powerful creature's blood to develop the blood emerald, a reagent that boosted blood regeneration, that would, combined with legendary life and the external tempering he suspected it required, push his ability further. Dragon blood would be ideal. In the original story, Hagrid had the dragon egg not long after Christmas and hatched Norbert. If he could get near a dragon, or at least powerful magical fauna, he might get the blood he needed. The idea electrified Xiaor. If he could cultivate blood emeralds on a larger scale, the regenerative rewards plus the tempering condition could trigger a far greater change in legendary life. Harry, he said, gratitude lighting his face. Thank you. Harry's grin broadened. About what I asked last time, reconsider. Ciel left without a backward glance. He didn't want to get tangled up in Dumbledore's schemes again. Farewell. See you around. No words can express my thanks. Then he turned back and leaned close to Harry, whispering, in the potions classroom on the 3rd floor, the 3rd locker from the left, there's a book titled Advanced Potion Making, but inside the cover it's actually Succubus Queen and Dragon Maid. He grinned. How's that for returning the favor? Chapter 84. Practice, Two-Faced, Temptation. When Xiaor Sprout had firmly refused him earlier, Harry's face had registered disappointment. Now, though, the information Xiaor Sprout offered made Harry's eyes light up. The Succubus Queen and the Dragon Maid? That sounds amazing. Xiaor Sprout, my good brother. He hurried to add, if you're going to Hagrid's, let me know first. Hagrid really values you. He said he needs to tidy up before you arrive. Xiaor Sprout thought for a moment. The uproar from today had blown up again. Even if he went to Hagrid's, it would be wiser to let things settle for a couple of days. He'd wait until Professor Sprout's anger had cooled. Let's make it this weekend, he said. I can't just leave the castle now. My aunt might get more upset. Harry nodded understandingly and hurried off, already eager to find that advanced potion-making textbook and see what explosive secrets it contained. Xiaor Sprout left the Quidditch pitch and headed toward the greenhouse with a sliver of hope that he might catch Professor Sprout unawares and get in for some overtime before another refusal. But Professor Sprout seemed to have anticipated him. As he reached the greenhouse door, it was closed from the inside, and her voice came through, sharp and controlled. Xiaor Sprout, you've truly angered me this time. Go back. Don't even think about coming to work here again until you've reflected properly on your mistakes. Xiaor Sprout forced a wry smile. There was nothing for it. Aunt Sprout was serious. With the greenhouse closed to him and no potion work available, even the abandoned broom warehouse might be locked off. For the first time in a long while, he felt a little lost. He was used to a busy life. Suddenly free, he didn't know what to do with himself. He drew a deep breath and looked at his system panel. It glowed more richly than before. He'd earned several gold and silver level charms since his first year. He'd gleaned insights from the Mixed Blood Prince's notes and Professor Flitwick's explanations, and he understood them in principle, but something about those abilities still felt insubstantial. On the panel, the powers shimmered, faint and ethereal, as if barely sanded to solidity. He recognized the feeling from his previous life, comprehension that hadn't been turned to instinct. Complex formulas, subtle techniques, he could work them in theory, but in practice there was always a hesitation, an uncertainty. The root cause was simple: not enough practice. He decided then and there to use the time well. If I have free time, I'll polish my charms, he told himself. I'll turn the lessons from the Mixed Blood Prince's notes and Professor Flitwick into something I truly own. He found an empty classroom and settled in. Wand in hand, he calmed his mind until it was as still as a pond. He detached himself from the events of the week and focused on the work at hand. Starting with the most basic charm he'd learned, the soil loosening spell, he began the slow, monotonous grind. Precise incantation, accurate gesture, intent aligned with motion. Terra, louse. There were no flashy flourishes, only the trinity of word, wand, and will. After each attempt, he paused, thinking through the smallest details: finger position, breath, the shaping of thought. Then he did it again. It was dull, tedious even. New spells come with excitement. Practicing the ones you already know is a different kind of endurance. But he stayed exacting, not letting any perceivable details slip. When his mind grew numb, he switched to the next charm and repeated the cycle. He reminded himself, brilliance erupts after long stretches of silent endurance. Hours passed. The corridor lights dimmed. Little by little, the faint, elusive luster of the abilities on his system panel shed its illusion and became solid and transparent. Deep in the castle that night, others wandered the halls. A scarf-wrapped figure hurried along the fourth floor, looking more disheveled and fragile by the day. Quirrell's face was hard with annoyance. That Cerberus in the dungeons had been a nightmare. Thick-skinned, monstrously strong, endlessly energetic, and maddeningly resistant to magic. Ordinary spells were like a breeze against it. He had tried again today and been driven off. The thought of further delay gnawed at him. When would he get the Philosopher's Stone? Even with the Dark Lord sharing his body, Quirrell felt himself weakening. He grew desperate. Then he saw a light in an empty classroom and heard incantations. Recognition and opportunity lit his face. Sharp Sprout's voice. The memory of Halloween flashed across Quirrell's mind. The boy's strength, the way he had helped subdue the troll. If magic couldn't dent the Cerberus, brute force might at least distract or stall it. If Sharp Sprout could be tempted into a fight, even briefly, Quirrell might find a chance to advance. The plan seemed simple. Tempting a young wizard with shortcuts had worked on others. Sharp Sprout, alone and working at dull spells, would be easy prey. He crossed the corridor and peered into the doorway as Sharp Sprout practiced Lumos. The sudden pale light revealed Quirrell's face and startled Sharp Sprout into tightening his grip on his wand. "Professor Quirrell?" Sharp Sprout called. Quirrell tried on an air of flustered admiration. I couldn't sleep, so I came out for a walk. I heard you practicing charms. Good, very good. I admire a diligent young wizard." He stepped into the room, smiling as though he were pleased. Then his tone shifted, soft and coaxing. "But practicing like this, your efficiency is so low. These are trivial spells. If you want to progress, I know some quick methods, very powerful spells. Come to my office and I'll teach them to you in secret." As he spoke, the stammer thinned. The smile took on a different edge, temptation disguised as mentorship. Sharp Sprout's heart tightened, but after a moment he shook his head. "No, Professor. I'm not even proficient with the charms I already know. I'll keep practicing these." Quirrell's expression flickered with displeasure, but he hid it under a smile. "Very good, very steadfast. But remember, you can always come to me. Truly powerful magic, understand?" He turned to leave, confident he'd sown a seed. Quirrell told himself it was a patient game. The lure of quick, powerful magic could overwhelm a young wizard. Even if Sharp Sprout resisted the first few nights, Quirrell expected fatigue and curiosity would do the rest. He imagined the boy, bored and worn down by repetition, thinking back on his words. He pictured it, one visit, and the student would trade slow steadiness for dazzling results. The first night passed without more than a flicker of hope. The second night, Quirrell felt a little surprised, but still secure. Nights 3 and 4, however, brought no change. Ciel Sprout kept at his monotonous practice. Quirrell's patience thinned. On the 5th night, he could no longer wait. He found Ciel Sprout in the same classroom, still working on the basics. Ciel Sprout, he began, pressing his advantage. Why not come to me? What use is practicing these simple spells? I can teach you far more powerful ones. Ciel Sprout glanced up, expression steady but tired. Powerful magic? He asked. Quirrell's voice warmed with promise. Very useful. You'll get higher marks. People will admire you. You'll make a name for yourself. And, he lowered his voice, making the temptation personal and dangerous, have you forgotten your parents' vendetta? With powerful magic, you could take revenge yourself. There was a long silence. Ciel Sprout's face remained openly naive. Professor, I'm a Hufflepuff, he said quietly. We don't chase high marks for their own sake. Passing is enough. Fame and admiration, those are for other houses. Quirrell's face tightened, irritation climbed in his veins, but he forced himself to continue. And your parents' vengeance? Will you be content to let it stand? Ciel Sprout shook his head, but his reply was calm and firm. The Ministry of Magic and the Wizengamot have made their judgment. As members of the magical world, we must understand, obey, and respect the law. I trust in Minister Fudge and in Headmaster Dumbledore. I believe in a fair and just magical world. Professor, we must not harbor thoughts of vigilantism. Quirrell had clearly expected a different reaction. He stared for a moment, then turned away, slammed the door, and left so quickly he could hardly hide his fury. In the corridor, he walked with heavy breath, cursing in his mind. Hopeless. Rotten wood. That Hufflepuff. Rotten wood. That's why we Ravenclaws despise Hufflepuffs the most. Inside the classroom, Ciel Sprout let out a long breath and felt some of his tension ease. His expression, however, stayed serious. Quirrell had already marked him. Even if the professor seemed thrown now, he was unlikely to give up for long. Ciel Sprout looked back at his system panel. After 5 days of disciplined polishing, the shimmer that had once been half illusion had finally solidified. But it still wasn't nearly enough to counter the threat Quirrell posed. Ciel Sprout clenched his fist. I need to go to Hagrid, he decided. I have to speed up the work on the goldfish vine. We can't wait. Chapter 85, Learning, Giant. Did you lure Char here? Early the next morning, Char found Harry and suggested they visit Hagrid that day. Harry looked distracted. His eyes were ringed with shadow, as if he'd been up all night. When Char mentioned Hagrid, it took Harry a moment to register. Ah, okay, no problem, Harry said at last. I'll write to Hagrid now and tell him to expect us. Noon should be fine. Char nodded, then couldn't help asking, Harry, have you been staying up late recently? Harry laughed. Char, that book you asked me to find, Advanced Potion Making. Heh, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. We've been staying up all night in the dormitory studying. Potions is, wow, it's deep. He lowered his voice. Char, do you have any other potion knowledge you can teach us? Cough, are there any other copies of Advanced Potion Making? Char's expression went odd. Harry, you lot need to show some restraint. Harry gave an awkward, pleading smile. Char sighed. All right, in the potions classroom, basement level, 3rd locker, there's a copy of 1,000 Magical Herbs and Fungi. I think you'll find what you're looking for in there. Harry's face lit up. He spun and started waving at Ron and the others. Brothers, new study materials. Hermione, nearby, had overheard enough to follow them. As Char passed, she couldn't hide her curiosity. Char, how did you do it? You actually got Harry and the others to stay up on purpose to study potions. Since when did they get interested in potions? Char looked a little guilty and dodged the question. Maybe they finally understand how hard you work, he said, and want to share some of the house cup pressure with you. Hermione's surprise softened into something like relief. Is that so? She breathed. So they aren't completely oblivious to house pride after all. Maybe my approach has been too harsh. She laughed nervously. Char froze. If Hermione ever learned the truth, if Dumbledore heard he'd opened the door of learning for the boy who lived, What then? He quickened his pace without meaning to. Danger. Better run. Fortunately, morning passed without incident. At noon, Char took a deep breath and walked out toward Hagrid's hut on the edge of the forbidden forest. Before he reached it, he saw Hagrid's broad figure waving from the door. The hut itself looked well cared for. The wood gleamed with wax, a warm reddish-brown in the sunlight. Hagrid bounded over and hugged him the moment Char arrived. "I've been waiting for you," he boomed. "Come in. It's getting nippier. Warm yourself by the fire and have a cup of hot tea. Oh, I've brought something." He carried in a plate piled with dark, oddly shaped cakes. "Try these. My own dragon liver cakes." Char remembered the infamous treats from the original stories, the sort of thing that could break teeth. He had no desire to try them, yet he couldn't refuse Hagrid's hospitality. He took a cautious bite. His eyes widened. The cake was crisp with a little chew, not as hard as he'd imagined, and had a remarkable weedy aroma. It was actually good. More surprisingly, a warm current seemed to run through him as he ate, like the life force boosts he'd received before. For Char's current legendary level constitution, the effect was faint, but it was unmistakably pleasant. He licked his lips. "Hagrid, what's in these? They're delicious. Could I have another?" Hagrid's eyes watered. He choked up, then opened his arms and hugged Char again. "Char, I can tell we share the same blood. Even if it's distant, we're kin." Char blinked, taken aback. Hagrid went on. He wasn't a bad cook. His sausages, Harry had always said, were the best. But dragon liver cake was a different matter. Over the years, Hagrid had continued to serve it and even advertised it in the Daily Prophet as his specialty. His thinking was simple. Anyone who bought the dragon liver cake and then came back for more probably had giant blood. A normal person might try one out of curiosity, but would never repurchase it. Apart from one wizard who'd bought it and then tried to claim tooth insurance, nobody had ever come back for seconds, until now. Char was the first. Hagrid's tears of joy flowed freely. After so many years, he'd found someone who could stand Hagrid's cooking and maybe, perhaps, share giant blood. Char almost wanted to explain that his physiology was unusual rather than giant, but seeing Hagrid so happy made him hesitate. He finished the plate. The portions were designed for half-giants and very filling. He had to stop Hagrid before another batch was made. "Burp, Hagrid, no more. I really can't eat another." Hagrid grinned his simple, warm grin. "That's fine. I'll bake some for you to take back to the dormitory. They won't go bad. If you need more, write to me and I'll keep baking." "Right." Hagrid rummaged in a cupboard and pulled out a package. "Since it's our first meeting, I should give you a gift. It's getting cold. I made this blanket from unicorn hair. My workmanship's not great. Don't mind it." Char stared at the silver blanket peeking from the cloth. The value of that much unicorn hair was staggering. He waved his hands away. "Hagrid, you can't. It's far too valuable. I can't accept it." Hagrid's eyes reddened. "Char, do you feel ashamed to be connected to a half-giant?" He lowered his head. "I mean, it's fine. It's perfectly normal. Haha, no, sorry, I must have." Char felt a tangle of emotions. After a moment, he took the blanket with a helpless smile. "I just think it's too expensive. But, all right, half-giants ought to have unicorn hair blankets. Thank you, Hagrid. I'll accept it." Hagrid burst into tears of joy again. When he had calmed a little, Char asked if he could see the troll Hagrid had been tending. Hagrid didn't hesitate. A little kin wanted to see a dangerous creature? Of course. He'd already cleared the outer edge of the forbidden forest. It would be safe. They walked out to a small clearing. The air carried the unmistakable stench of a troll, and ahead, a large familiar figure loomed. The troll whose bones Char had broken earlier was mostly healed now. The injuries that would have required long recovery in humans were not so significant to a troll, especially under Hagrid's care. It grunted happily when it saw Hagrid. "Hagrid," it mumbled. But then the troll's small eyes found Char. Recognition, plain as a bruise, swept over its face. Hagrid grinned. "Look who I brought you." The troll stared at Char, incredulous. "You brought this little wizard here?" It let out a panicked shriek and backed away, then collapsed to the ground, cowering. "Don't hit! Don't! I surrender!" Char watched the troll's terrified retreat with a flicker of emotion. He took a fresh potted goldfish vine from his bag and began to walk forward slowly. His eyes never left the plant. His gaze was fixed on the goldfish vine as he approached the trembling creature. Chapter 86, Experiment and Planning. Char watched the goldfish vine in his hand, and the troll sprawled on the ground before him. The creature's small eyes were full of fear. It still remembered the last time Char had thumped it with a baseball bat after it ate several pots of the vine. The memory of broken bones seemed fresh and made the troll awkwardly edge away from the plant. Char frowned. He said, and then louder, "Did I tell you to move? Stop right there." Under Char's tone, the troll immediately quivered and curled up, pitiable and helpless. Char stepped closer, frowning harder. He had expected the goldfish vine to react to the troll's presence the way it had reacted with Neville and Hannah, becoming unusually active when near a wizard. Now he was close enough. The vine's leaves even brushed against the troll's skin, and still nothing. No sign of the rapid maturation he had seen before. Could his hypothesis be wrong? Did the troll really not catalyze the vine? How then had that last incident happened? Does the troll need to make contact with the vine? He wondered, and he continued to approach. Behave yourself. Open your hand. If you dare damage my goldfish vine, I'll beat you again. Grudgingly, the troll extended its palm. Char placed the vine in its hand and let the leaves touch its skin. Still nothing. Certain he had not imagined the earlier incident. The goldfish vine had matured rapidly then. What was different now? Does it need to be beaten first? He considered, glancing at the trembling troll. The creature's eyes filled with big, wet tears. Char shook his head and dismissed the idea of another beating. Forget it. Let's rule out other factors. Hagrid, who'd been watching, stepped forward to reissue his instructions. Don't leave the Forbidden Forest. Don't wander toward Hogwarts. Don't relieve yourself wherever you please. And, most importantly, take a bath! Do you know how much you stink? He emphasized each order, but the troll stared at him blankly, trying to hold on to the words. Hagrid sighed. Trolls could only remember the barest essentials for survival. Even if they managed to store something for a few seconds, it would be gone soon after. Everything else slipped away. With a brain built that way, Hagrid had to repeat the same reminders constantly. Hagrid was about to lead Char away when Char suddenly stopped, then turned back to stare at the troll with a dawning look on his face. "So that's it," he muttered. "How did I not think of this?" Hagrid blinked. In a short time, what had Char figured out? The goldfish vine in Char's hand was growing quickly, its activity stronger than when it had first been with Neville at the start of the year. Char's eyes lit up. He thought it through aloud. An ordinary person's memory, someone as forgetful as Neville, can subconsciously retain and forget things. Forgetting happens to everyone to some extent. So as long as the goldfish vine is near a wizard, it can absorb the forgetting it needs. Trolls are different. Their brains are too small. They only store the most necessary survival information. The rest, there's nowhere to store it. If there's nothing to forget, then the vine can't take anything in. That's why, normally, the vine won't mature near a troll. But last time, beating the troll made it hold on to the survival rule, don't provoke Char and the vine. In remembering that, it instantly discarded other things. The vine was catalyzed and matured fast. This time, it wasn't until Hagrid started repeating a list of precautions. Those things were instantly forgotten, and the vine could finally absorb the forgetting. A plan formed in his head. Char now knew how to use trolls to cultivate goldfish vine. He looked at the shivering creature and issued a strange command. Memorize these words: abandon, ability, able. The troll regarded him, confused, and then tried to mimic the sounds haltingly. Abandon, ability, able. As the troll struggled with the syllables, the goldfish vine in its palm drank in the sudden rush of discarded, incomplete thoughts like a tonic. Its growth accelerated at once, verdant and vigorous. Char's face brightened. One troll like this could easily double his current yield of goldfish vine. Neville and Hannah's forgetfulness was a temporary advantage. As they matured and experienced more, they would remember more and forget less, so the vine's benefit from them would decline. Trolls, however, were innately forgetful. They could continually provide a steady stream of forgetting without that supply diminishing over time. In terms of cultivating goldfish vine, the trolls were far more useful than Neville. Even the troll's stink seemed less offensive now. Char let himself imagine the scale. If one troll could double output, what could a whole group do? Quirrell hadn't used just one troll on Halloween in the original events. The obstacle in the Philosopher's Stone had required more than one, and those trolls must have been taken from the Forbidden Forest. That meant there were likely groups of trolls living out there, perhaps even a settlement. He turned to Hagrid. Do trolls in the Forbidden Forest live in groups? Hagrid, who knew the forest well, nodded. Aye, I've seen 'em. By Merlin, that place was like a living hell. Stench near knocked me out. They roam about looking for food. If they stayed put, they'd wipe out the grass where they settled. Char's smile widened. Can you help me find them? This is important. Hagrid's face softened. No problem. But they're thick-headed and wander all over. Could be here today and there tomorrow. I'll need time to track 'em down. Relief eased through Char. The silver sheen of his magic perception enhancement had already become quite pronounced. After he harvested the next batch of goldfish vine, he would reach gold tier. But once he reached gold tier, the cumulative benefit from bronze tier rewards would start to wane, and he would need more goldfish vine to keep stacking improvements. That meant his magic perception, which had been improving rapidly, would settle into steadier growth unless he found a way to scale production. If he could capture and tame a group of trolls to cultivate vines, that problem would vanish. For now, he would have to wait for Hagrid's tracking. The Forbidden Forest was vast. Finding a cluster of trolls might take weeks. Char tried to calm his excitement. Gold tier magic perception was within reach regardless, and with it, he could attempt the Guardian Tree Potion and the next stage of Guardian Tree cultivation. The soil loosening spell, however, still lagged a little behind gold tier. He shouldn't become overambitious and neglect what he already had. Don't neglect the bird in hand for 10 in the bush, he told himself. Keep practicing. Soil loosening spell is close to gold tier. Time moved on. 2 days passed. Chapter 87, Promotion, Visit, Dark Arts. 2 days later, outside Hagrid's hut, Ciel waved his wand. He cast the soil loosening spell again and again on the forest floor. On his system panel, a golden light crept over the words soil loosening spell. After another unremarkable cast, the last trace of light covered it. Promoted. Ciel exhaled, and a satisfied smile lit his face. With this, the soil loosening spell, the pruning charm, and Lumos, charms that were extremely useful for planting, had all reached gold tier. The latter two were even nearing platinum tier. When cultivating the Guardian Tree, these charms would no longer be a weakness. All he needed now was for his magic perception enhancement to reach gold tier, then he could plant the Guardian Tree and enter the next stage. After that, the process would be much simpler. He only had to brew the Holy Tree Potion. He couldn't promise a 100% success rate, but 70 to 80% seemed reasonable. If it worked, the Guardian Tree would become the second magical plant he owned, after the piranha algae, that could mass-produce silver tier rewards. If he planted Guardian Trees on a large enough scale, the harvest would be substantial, and his defense against the dark arts skill could jump to gold or even platinum in a short time. He might even gain some resistance to dark arts. It would be a huge boost to his confidence facing future dangers. Successfully planting the Guardian Tree would also be a milestone in herbology and make it easier to get more experimental plots in the greenhouse. Excitement buzzed in him for a moment, then his gaze returned to the promoted soil loosening spell. What exactly did the gold tier do differently? Would it make planting noticeably better? Curiosity made him flick his wand again. Terra, louse! A yellow-brown light sank into the ground. The soil immediately seemed to come alive. Layers wriggled, compact clods loosened, and buried stones were turned out. Both the radius and the depth of the effect were larger than before the promotion. When Ciel pushed a finger into the turned soil to feel the change, he discovered the bottom layer continued to shiver faintly. An ongoing, subtle movement kept the earth from reclumping. The soil stayed loose and breathable. That meant he wouldn't have to cast the soil loosening spell every day anymore. The constantly active soil would distribute nutrients and moisture evenly. Where nutrients were lacking, new nutrients would flow there with the movement. Every root hair would be better cared for during growth. As the saying went, to grow healthy flowers, first grow the roots. With a strong root system, the plant would perform well above average. Xia'er estimated the promoted spell would improve a magical plant's growth by at least 10%, which translated to more reward per harvest. Over time, that would be a significant increase in income. He glanced at the time and brightened. Finally, the punishment time was over. 7 whole days he'd been barred from the greenhouse and the potions classroom, torture for someone who wanted nothing more than to work. Now that it was lifted, he was hungry to get back to his plants. He almost ran into Hagrid as he hurried across the grounds. "Xia'er," Hagrid waved, excited. "Still practicing charms, are you?" Xia'er stopped. "I thought I could go back to the greenhouse." "Not today," Hagrid said briskly. "You're on the Hufflepuff Quidditch team, aren't you? The Quidditch season started. Today's Gryffindor versus Slytherin, the opening match. Everyone's going. You can't miss your first match." Hagrid fussed through his enormous coat pockets and produced a monocular, a thick blanket, and a pair of earplugs. "First Quidditch match of your life. Don't miss it, I insist." At that moment, an owl swooped down with a letter from Professor Sprout. The note said much the same thing in a stricter tone. "Xia'er, I know you're eager to go to the greenhouse, but you cannot miss the opening match. When it starts, I must see you in the stands. Otherwise, I'll assume your reflection was insufficient and you'll have to keep reflecting." Xia'er smiled wryly. In his previous life, parents had always hovered, wanting children to stay in their rooms and study. Now he, of all people, wanted to be working and couldn't. Funny how things reversed. Still, he couldn't argue with the professors. Reluctantly, he agreed. "All right, I'll go." He wasn't opposed to watching. He remembered how dramatic this match was in the original story. Not only was the play on the pitch fierce, there were undercurrents off it too. Why would Quirrell try to secretly curse Harry's broom in broad daylight, risking Harry's life in front of McGonagall, Snape, and Dumbledore? Quirrell had been exceptionally bright at school. His grades rivaled the best. He had even discovered traces of Voldemort's remnant soul on his own. A rational person would have reported it to Dumbledore or the Ministry. Instead, Quirrell was overconfident and tried to handle it himself, and it ended with him being possessed by Voldemort. Given Quirrell's nature, tampering on the Quidditch pitch wasn't entirely out of character. Xia'er had no intention of getting involved. He came simply to watch. Another thought hit him. In the original, Snape had been bitten by the Cerberus and severely injured, his leg damaged in a way that made him limp. Because the Cerberus's bite had been tainted with dark arts, potions couldn't fully heal it. In the Quidditch match, Snape struggled to countercurse Harry's broom, and his performance was impaired by that wound. Xia'er had met Snape recently. The man was curt, hard to get along with, and complained constantly, but he had taught Xia'er and even lent him the potions book from the Half-Blood Prince that helped him immensely. Xia'er owed him. He should visit. He asked Hagrid for a few dragon liver cakes, a large skin of goat's milk, and several strings of Hagrid's sausages, then made his way toward the Slytherin head's office. Students were already distracted by the Quidditch match. Most had gone to the stands, so no one paid much attention to Xia'er's odd appearance. Outside Snape's office, he knocked. A surprised voice called his name. "Xia'er Sprout?" Footsteps shuffled inside. Snape opened the door. His face pinched when he saw the food Xia'er carried. "What are you doing with those? This isn't a general store." Xia'er offered an apologetic smile. "I haven't been in the castle these past few days. I heard your leg was injured, Professor, so I asked Hagrid for some things. Dragon liver cake is tough, but if you soak it in hot goat's milk, it's very restorative. Hagrid's sausages are tasty, and the ingredients are good. I thought you might find them useful." Snape snorted. "Always thinking about food. Only a Hufflepuff would. Fine. Don't put them on the floor. Set them on the table." Xia'er obeyed. Snapey then dragged himself to a chair, favoring one leg. His face was paler than usual. Seeing him like that, Xia'er realized how much worse off Snape was compared to his normal imposing self. The injured leg made his gait awkward. The sight of the wound left Xia'er unsettled. Cerberus really lived up to its fearsome reputation. No wonder Quirrell had been overwhelmed. Snape noticed Xia'er's look and said curtly, "If you have something to say, say it." Xia'er asked, "Professor, can't potions heal that kind of injury?" Snape's expression darkened. "There's dark arts attached to the wound. If it were ordinary, yes, but this taint is of a peculiar nature. It can't be removed. It can only be ground down over time by the body's life force. The healing will be far slower than with normal injuries, and in some cases the person is consumed by it. He straightened, the old arrogance returning to his voice. That said, I'm no ordinary potions master. I only need to wait until the dark arts has been worn down enough, then I can deal with it. It won't take excessively long. In about 2 weeks, I should be back at work. Don't get lazy in the meantime. Xiao's shoulders drooped. 2 weeks? Does that mean I can't get back to the greenhouse for another 2 weeks? He hesitated, then asked the question that had been nagging him more urgently. You said the wound eats away at your life force. Does it consume a lot? Could external life force help? Snape blinked at the question, as if surprised by the concern. After a moment, he replied, External life force can have an effect, yes. Chapter 88, Healing, the Mixed Blood Prince, and Expectation. Before Snape could react to what Char meant, Char bit his fingertip. A bright bead of blood welled up and fell from his skin. Snape's pupils narrowed. He looked at Char with a mixture of shock and something almost like amusement. Deep down, a flicker of emotion and warmth surfaced. After half a life spent skirting darkness, used to betrayal and slaughter, Snape had never imagined a student would offer his life force to help undo a dark arts infection. It was almost laughable. Get away, he snapped through gritted teeth. I don't need your help. A little wizard like you, even if you drain your blood, Snape began, scoffing. The drop of blood struck the ruined flesh of his leg. A fetid black smoke rose for an instant, and then the dark arts that had clung to his wound and made each breath a torment began to dissipate. More than half of it faded as if snuffed out. Snape's mind went blank. All the work he'd done to stabilize the injury from Cerberus's bite, hours of counter-curses and dittany, had been undone in a heartbeat by a single drop of a boy's blood. What kind of constitution did this sprout have? You, he muttered, incredulous. Are you truly a half-blood giant? Char shook his head. No, but I grew up planting trees on a Muggle estate. Maybe the long, physical work toughened me. My constitution is a little different. Snape's cheek twitched. Long-term labor? What on earth had this boy been doing to get that kind of resilience? Were mill horses involved? Before he could pursue the thought, Char let a few more droplets fall on the wound. The black mist thinned and shrank until the infection had almost vanished. After Snape dabbed on a little dittany, the remaining damage looked like something that had been healing for days rather than hours. The pain remained, but it no longer hindered his movement or corrupted his spellwork. A weight lifted from him. His sallow face relaxed for the first time in days. He also felt, embarrassingly, indebted. Snape was not practiced in thanks. Sarcasm was his default mode with pupils, and disdain with colleagues. For a heartbeat, he didn't know what to do with himself. Then he remembered the book. Char had the handwriting, the margin notes. An idea settled into place, a cold, fake cough. Did you find anything in the potions classroom? Snape asked. For example, an old textbook, he went on, voice clipped. One that contains extraordinary, even dangerous, magical insights. Charms you wouldn't expect to find in potions notes. Perhaps a particularly ingenious master of both potions and charms left it behind? Char felt his heart stutter. Had his study of the Mixed Blood Prince's copy been discovered? He kept his face neutral. Snape had created many of those spells and might well see the signs. Better to be honest than to have Dumbledore or Professor Sprout learn of it. Dumbledore would be too curious. Sprout would forbid it outright. Still, Char's fingers curled at the memory of the annotated textbook as he nodded. Yes, Professor. I found a copy of Advanced Potion Making. It was annotated by someone who called himself the Mixed Blood Prince. There were notes on Levicorpus, Sectum Sempra, and many other clever ideas. That person was brilliant. Char couldn't resist a little praise. He combined charms and potions in ways I've never seen. I'd be honored to meet someone like that. Snape hid a small, pleased twitch. He nodded with the gravity of a man who thought he'd made a useful discovery. Indeed, that book is a treasure. You have shown good judgment recognizing its worth. How did you know I found it? Char asked. Snape paused, then opened his mouth. For a ridiculous moment, he flirted with the truth. He had been the Mixed Blood Prince once, after all. And then his pride snagged on the memory of his younger self's melodrama. The name had been childish, pretentious. He had not expected to live long enough to be reminded of it. His mouth twisted. "I also read the Mixed Blood Prince's textbook when I was younger," he said instead. "I left it in a storage cabinet for future students to discover. As for who the prince really was, I have a guess, but keep it to yourself." He lowered his voice theatrically. "A wizard talented in both potions and charms, not from a distant century, with a generous streak, and very poor taste in adolescent nicknames. So my guess is Dumbledore is the Mixed Blood Prince." Char blinked. That wasn't the confession he'd been expecting. "Professor, are you sure?" Snape's expression was deadpan. "Consider the evidence. Who would set their office password to something as odd as cockroach cluster, if not someone with a peculiar sense of humor? If he could invent that, he could have called himself anything in his youth." Char's cheek twitched. Well, if that was the script, so be it. Snape looked satisfied with his diversion. "Since we've both read the same textbook, I can spare 2 hours a week to guide you through its lessons," Snape offered. "But the Quidditch match will begin soon. You should go." After Char left, Snape allowed himself a faint, restrained smile he almost never permitted. That had been close, very close to a confession, and he'd managed to keep his dignity intact. Char, meanwhile, walked away grinning inwardly. He understood why Snape wouldn't admit to the title. The name was embarrassing. But a promise of instruction was good enough. He could now consult Snape openly about the margin notes. Plans filled Char's mind as he walked toward the Quidditch pitch. Piranha algae would mature in about a month. Once it did, his water enhancement and cutting charms could advance by a level or two. By Christmas, the Margaret that boosted magical strength would be ready. Then Sectum Sempra might be within reach. If he could work up the spell to a silver or gold proficiency with Snape's guidance and combine it with his water enhancement and cutting charms, he might finally have the power to stop the two-faced man. One well-placed Sectum Sempra could be decisive. He breathed deeply, steadying his excitement. None of it was guaranteed yet. He needed to stay focused on his daily tasks. For now, Quidditch. Snape's leg was healed, and Char wondered whether that would change anything in the game. He pushed ahead toward the stands and the pitch, both expectation and resolve humming under his skin. Chapter 89, Noseless Monster, Biting Cabbage. Charles walked toward the Quidditch pitch, thoughts flickering through his head. Just then, a stammering voice called after him. "Charles, are you going to watch the match?" Quirrell asked, emerging from the shadowed corridor and forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He had broken down in front of Charles before and still hadn't found a way past Cerberus. He had to scheme. "Do you want to watch the match together?" "I'm not boasting," Quirrell added hastily. "When I was at school, I knew a lot about Quidditch." Charles' hand tightened, and he looked at his professor with cool appraisal. He'd put up with Quirrell so far, but he didn't trust him. If Quirrell kept following him, he might appear whenever Charles went to the greenhouse or potions at night. Quirrell had even tried to kill Harry during a match once, and the darker worry sat at the back of Quirrell's head. Voldemort still slumbered inside him. If that noseless monster woke with his twisted legilimency, who knew what he might pry loose? Charles needed to quiet him somehow, but he refused Quirrell's invitation. "Sorry, Professor," he said. "I arranged to watch the match with my aunt. It's almost time, so I'll be going." Quirrell's smile stiffened as Charles walked away. Fury flared up inside him. "Damn kid," he thought. "He doesn't know what's good for him." He clung like a dog's plaster, wouldn't stop following me. If this continued, Quirrell worried aloud, he'd be able to find Charles anywhere. He couldn't trust leaving his movements unguarded. Still, Quirrell had a plan. Get close, use his position as professor, and then bewitch the boy. He refused to believe a student could be so sharp. But as he watched Charles retreat into the crowd, a cold glint flashed in the boy's eyes, and Quirrell felt uneasy. By 11, the stands around the Quidditch pitch were nearly full. Staff and students had turned out in force. Charles hurried to the seat Professor Sprout had saved for him. "Charles, why are you only just arriving?" she asked. "You almost missed the team's entrance." Charles looked contrite. "I suddenly remembered a few goldfish vines hadn't been watered," he said. "I was delayed a bit." Professor Sprout was speechless. This was the season opener. How many people had been up all night for this? Charles had paused to water plants before a match. Fortunately, cheers were rising as both teams entered the field. Gryffindor in scarlet and Slytherin in emerald passed one another with fierce looks. A blast of pyrotechnics filled the air, and with it, a strong garlic smell rolled over the stands. Quirrell had arrived with a basket of fresh garlic left at his office door. He intended to cast a spell on Harry's broom later. Brooms like the Nimbus 2000 were heavily warded. Their protective charms made it difficult for others to interfere. Quirrell would have to use his true ability to get through those wards, and once he did, the lingering, putrid stench of his master would get worse. So, he planned to keep garlic at hand. The match began with a whistle. Quirrell's attention fastened on Harry. When the game grew intense and everyone's focus narrowed, Quirrell's lips moved without sound. He mouthed a wordless curse, sending the dark art toward Harry's broom. The Nimbus trembled and began to lose control, pitching Harry dangerously. Seated nearby, Snape frowned and began silently counter-chanting. A stabilizing magic surged toward the broom to resist the corruption. Two forces collided in the air, Quirrell's hidden curse and Snape's counterspell. Quirrell's face went briefly surprised. Someone had noticed. But possession by the Dark Lord had raised his dark art skill sharply. He feared no one but Dumbledore. He steadied himself. Snape's expression, too, turned grave. This curse on Harry was extraordinary dark magic, and offense was always easier than defense. All he could manage was to blunt the attack enough to keep Harry on his broom for the moment. He felt a pang of relief, thinking that if Charles hadn't healed his leg earlier and dispersed the magic tied to Cerberus, he probably wouldn't have been able to do much now. Snape sped up his silent chanting to press a counterattack, and Quirrell was momentarily thrown off. But he increased his speed as well and gradually suppressed Snape's interference. As he strove to force his dark magic through the Nimbus, a foul, rotten smell seeped up from the back of his head beneath his turban, the unmistakable reek of his master. He had to hide it. Dumbledore was at the match. If anyone detected the odor and realized what it meant, there would be no escape. Quirrell grabbed a large handful of garlic from the basket next to him. "Master," he whispered under his breath, "bear with it for a moment." He shoved the cloves into the back of his turban, pressing them near the place where the possession lay. The garlic's sharp scent partially masked the putrid odor, and Quirrell relaxed a little. Once he went all out, he thought, Harry Potter wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. Then, without warning, a fierce pain shot through the back of his head, as if something with sharp teeth had bitten him. Quirrell let out a pained cry. At the same time, a furious voice hammered inside his mind. "Quirrell, you put biting cabbage on my face? Are you trying to kill your master? Damn it, don't bite my nose!" Quirrell froze, terror rising in him. "What?" he whispered. "Biting cabbage?" Before he could think it through, the pain intensified into an unbearable itch and stinging, as if dozens of scabs had erupted across the back of his head. A new, pungent stench burst from beneath his turban. In his mind, Voldemort's voice went nearly frantic. "Giant devil's snare juice? You put this on my face too? Quirrell." For the first time since the possession, Quirrell felt a real flash of mortal fear. His mind raced to identify who would do a thing like this. Biting cabbage and giant devil's snare juice. Who would dare? The first person that came to his mind was Charles, who had just passed him in the corridor. Could it be him? Quirrell shook his head violently. No, the boy wouldn't be that vicious, would he? Then, desperate to deflect suspicion from himself and calm his master, Quirrell gritted his teeth. "Master, I absolutely didn't do this," he lied into the voice in his head. "I know who it was. The Weasley brothers. They're always trying to get at me, throwing stones and making a fuss. It must have been those damned brothers." Chapter 90, Fate, Harvest, Platinum Grade. When Quirrell swore to Lord Voldemort that the garlic juice must have come from the Weasley brothers, the basket beside him revealed its true nature. The garlic was actually biting cabbage and giant devil's snare disguised by mirror grass. The biting cabbage snapped their razor teeth and leapt at Quirrell, while the giant devil's snare sprayed corrosive sap. Quirrell screamed an ear-splitting shriek as his body was soon covered in lacerations and festering sores, emitting a nauseating stench. The commotion on the Quidditch pitch drew everyone's attention. Professor McGonagall, acting as commentator, went white with anger. She bellowed into the microphone, "Fred! George! What have you two done?" Fred and George Weasley looked bewildered and on the verge of tears. They protested as quickly as they could. "It wasn't us! We really didn't do it. We've got a match. Who would prank us now?" "Professor, you have to believe us." But no matter how loud their denials, the Gryffindors around them lowered their heads. Not because they didn't believe them, but because Fred and George had earned a reputation for mischief so complete that no wild stunt seemed unlikely. Even if the brothers were lying in coffins, everyone would expect them to throw a dung bomb at the funeral. The twins stood there, mouths full of protests they couldn't quite get out. Who on earth had dumped this mess on them? At that moment, a gasp rippled through the stands. "Harry! He's falling!" Ciel's eyes snapped from Quirrell to the sky. Harry had come off his broom, clutching the handle with both hands. His arms shook, and he looked like he wouldn't be able to hang on much longer. Ciel felt a jolt of surprise. In the original story, Harry had struggled with the bucking broom for a long while before finally tumbling, and he had even caught the golden snitch on the way down. Here, despite Snape's countercurse being more effective and Quirrell's hex wearing off sooner, Harry seemed to be holding on for a shorter time. Then Ciel remembered the study materials he'd given Harry and froze. If Harry had been up all night studying, that might explain his weakness. That thought made Ciel feel a prick of guilt. He might be partly responsible for Harry falling. Just then, Harry's grip went limp and he dropped. A chorus of screams burst from the stands. Some covered their eyes, afraid to watch him hit the ground. Ciel's first instinct was to leap in with a levitation charm or even a soil loosening spell to soften the landing, but he checked himself. Professor Sprout beside him had not reacted, and Dumbledore still sat watching from the pitch. If Harry died from the fall now, it would be a catastrophe, and Ciel didn't want to draw Dumbledore's attention by performing obvious rescue magic. He had no taste for being singled out by an influential headmaster. Before he made a choice, a crisp incantation rang out from the stands. Wingardium Leviosa! Hermione's wand movement was exact. The levitation charm halved Harry's falling momentum at once. He still hit the ground hard, but not fatally. Harry sat up, spat the glittering golden snitch into his palm, and then the Gryffindors erupted into a thunderous cheer. 170-60, Gryffindor wins! Harry was hoisted by his teammates and thrown into the air in celebration. The cheering didn't stop in the stands. Hermione, too, was lifted up and praised. Brilliant levitation charm. Hermione, you saved him. Even Ron, cheeks flushed, hurried to apologize. Hermione, I'm sorry, about before Halloween. I shouldn't have said those things. He trailed off, embarrassed but sincere. Hermione's eyes glistened. Since the start of the year, this was the first moment she felt truly at home in Gryffindor. On the pitch, Dumbledore watched the scene with a small, relieved smile. He even brushed a tear from his cheek. "This is friendship," he murmured. Ciel, however, felt only a cool satisfaction. The original trio had reformed. The paths of fate might fork, but they often settled into the same pattern. The trio, the Savior's Core, had officially begun their shared journey again. He forced down any impulse to intervene further. The Savior's adventures were not his concern. He glanced back toward the medical wing where the injured Quirrell was being carried. Judging by his condition, Quirrell would be incapacitated for some time. Ciel breathed out. He had to seize this window. If Quirrell recovered, he might target Ciel again. So while the pitch still buzzed with victory and celebration, Ciel slipped away toward the quiet of the greenhouse. The greenhouse felt like relief itself after the noisy stands. He returned to the plot he'd been tending for a week. Professor Sprout's punishment hadn't left it neglected. If anything, it looked even more vigorous. The reward light orb in the piranha algae tank had noticeably grown. At this rate, he could harvest by Christmas. The luminous mushroom bed was even more dramatic. The second batch had matured, full reward light orbs bobbing like ripe fruit, awaiting harvest. A warm thrill ran through Ciel. Clearly, Professor Sprout had taken time to tend these in his absence. He inhaled, full of anticipation. On the system panel, the Lumos line already glowed faintly platinum. Could this harvest push it to platinum grade? He didn't hesitate. He stepped into the mushroom patch like a man entering a tide and spread his arms. The reward light orbs above the beds drifted toward him like 100 streams converging. The luminous mushrooms you cultivated have matured. You received a reward, night vision slightly enhanced, bronze grade. You received a reward, a small amount of Lumos comprehension, bronze grade. A wave of change washed through him. His eyes burned with new sensations as insights into Lumos flooded his mind. On the system panel, the platinum glow around Lumos and night vision brightened, gradually eclipsing the former gold. As the last of the light orbs dimmed and their rewards consolidated, Shiar's eyes stung and a tear slipped down his cheek, but he barely noticed. He stared at the panel. Night vision, promoted to platinum grade. And then, unmistakably, Lumos, promoted to platinum grade. Chapter 91, Qualitative Change. Today. 2 platinum lights flared up in succession. Joy surged through Char. In the planting system's grading, each level represents a qualitative leap from the last, and the higher you go, the more dramatic that leap becomes. The jump from epic to legendary is dozens of times greater than from bronze to iron. A single rank can mean a world of difference. Going from gold to platinum was a watershed. The abilities after promotion would be far stronger than before, perhaps more than the sum of all prior upgrades. Char gripped his wand, eager to experience the change in his first platinum-level charm, Lumos. Lumos. He had practiced the charm countless times, but never had he felt so intimate with it. It was like 2 bloodlines merging. He could almost hear Lumos's breathing and heartbeat. Under Char's perception, Lumos felt as if it were under a microscope. He sensed every subtle fluctuation perfectly. Very easily, he could push Lumos to levels previously impossible. For example, Char's mind sparked. Instantly, the light from Lumos shifted into an invisible band. The frequency in the infrared region leapt forward. In the blink of an eye, the infrared reach of Char's Lumos more than doubled. He directed that frequency at the piranha algae tanks. The algae went wild, as if overjoyed by the perfect light. The serrated edges of their fronds scraped the glass, producing a harsh grinding sound. The reward light spheres suspended above the algae brightened and grew far faster than before. Char's face lit up. That meant harvest times for the piranha algae could be accelerated again. He could collect from these dozen tanks before the Christmas holiday. In the long run, the crop cycle for piranha algae could be shortened even more. That alone made Lumos's promotion worth it. But the changes went deeper. Feeling the breathing of Lumos's power at the tip of his wand, Char realized Lumos wasn't a single unified light source anymore. It was countless magic-stimulated light particles, each a miniature version of Lumos with its own frequency. Microscopically distinct, they integrated at the macro level into the complete charm. A thought rose in Char's mind. Could he control those microscopic particles individually? Could he, like when using frequency light spell, adjust their frequencies? If he synchronized them all, what would Lumos become? He began to experiment. Painstakingly, he tried to manipulate the tiny light particles inside Lumos. Delving that deep demanded extraordinarily high magic perception. If his Lumos mastery hadn't already undergone a qualitative shift, allowing him to compensate, it would have been impossible. Even so, sweat broke out on his forehead. He managed to synchronize only a small portion of the particles for a brief moment. In that instant, the light at the tip of his wand shrank in size while its brightness spiked several times over. A concentrated beam appeared, cutting through the air like a shaft of light. A moment later, as Char's control slipped, the abnormal state collapsed and Lumos returned to normal. Still, Char's heart raced for a long while. Lasers in the Muggle world were made by stimulating countless light particles to the same frequency, producing concentrated penetrating power and focused energy. Seeing the particle nature inside Lumos had given him the idea, and it seemed feasible. That fleeting beam had far exceeded Lumos's normal brightness and illumination. Right now, it was more like a very bright flashlight. With deeper control, perhaps this charm could acquire laser-like properties. Lumos also had a weak deterrent effect on dark creatures. Concentrate it like that, and who knew what might be possible? Char stored the idea for later. He wasn't going to rush such a difficult breakthrough. His magic perception still had a long way to go. For now, It was better to focus on practical gains. The soreness in his eyes finally vanished. The transformation of his night vision ability was complete. Char stepped into a dark room in the greenhouse with anticipation and was startled. Compared to his previous gold-level night vision, this was much clearer. His vision in darkness was stronger than in daylight. Details were crystal clear with a casual glance. It felt like eagle-eye vision. He smiled. Now that his relationship with Hagrid was solid, the Forbidden Forest, a treasure trove of rare magical plants, some even Professor Sprout didn't have, was essentially open to him. If he ever ventured in, this night vision would make the threat of dark creatures far less dangerous. Then, Char noticed strange things in his field of vision, colored specks of light. There were no fireflies in the greenhouse, so what were they? He followed them and found they came from the soil, from the walls, and most of all from the magical plants growing in the dark room. A realization dawned. Could these colored specks be traces of different kinds of magic? Had his platinum night vision evolved to let him see small amounts of magic in the dark? He focused on a few plants and watched light-speckled patterns emanate from them. Some areas gave off many specks, others very few, and some gave off none at all. He thought it through. The places with many specks were healthy. Sparse specks meant the plant was unhealthy. No specks meant withered. That means I can use my sight to judge the condition of magical plants, he said to himself. In a way, this indirectly boosts my magic perception. His pulse quickened. The assistance from platinum-level night vision, combined with the increased effectiveness of his water enhancements and his already strong magic perception, might bring him up to what would be considered gold-level perception. Soil Loosening Spell had already advanced to gold. The conditions for planting the guardian tree in this soil were all met. A fervent light filled Char's eyes. He carefully took out the guardian tree seed, sealed in a potion to keep it at the right germination state. Certainty surged through him. Today is the day. 92. Success. Milestone. Hard work. Looking at the sprouted guardian tree seed in his hand, Ciel Sprout held his breath. Transplanting the awakened seed from the potion into soil was the hardest step. If he got this right, the rest of the cultivation would be comparatively simple. Even without the holy tree potion for water, the guardian tree might still mature with enough luck. It would just be lower quality. He had never done this for real, but he had rehearsed it 1,000 times in his head. Now every precaution and detail surfaced at once. The exhilaration over his Lumos and night vision upgrades to platinum faded. In its place came an icy, razor-sharp focus. Time seemed to slow. Ciel slipped into a flow state. He cleared his mind of everything except the seed he had worked so hard to bring this far. Click. The extinguisher opened. Every stray light in the greenhouse was drawn into it, leaving complete darkness. With his platinum night vision, Ciel moved as if in daylight. The world was impossibly clear. He could even see the sacred magic points of light leaking from the seed. He submerged his head into a transparent water tank. The water enhancement took effect. On the system panel, a touch of golden light appeared within the silver sheen of the magic perception enhancement text. His magic perception sharpened another notch. The magic within the guardian tree seed became clearer than ever. Without hesitation, he began. The tip of his wand tapped the test tube, and his magic set the potion to trembling, rousing the seed from dormancy. The process resembled the seed's initial processing, but it was much more complex now. Inside the seed, Ciel's magic, the seed's sacred magic, and the potion's magic braided together. In his vision, 3 different kinds of magic light twisted and merged. He had to coax the potion's magic out carefully while keeping his own magic and the seed's sacred magic in delicate balance. His upgraded night vision helped. Without it, his current perception wouldn't have been enough. Still, he wasn't relaxed. Each wand tap raised the complexity. He focused on every tiny change to avoid any mistake. It weighed heavily on him. After a few taps, sweat beaded on his forehead. The strain deepened as the magic inside the seed grew more intricate. His temples throbbed, veins stood out. He hadn't felt this mentally exhausted in years. He couldn't tell how long he'd been at it, but he could feel the end approaching. After a brief pause, he seized the moment when the seed's internal magic was most harmonious. One more careful tap of his wand, and he reached into the potion bottle to touch the seed. Its roots flared with rich vitality and holy magic. He didn't hesitate. He aimed at a patch of test soil and, almost on instinct from thousands of rehearsals, cast the soil loosening spell even though his head hurt. As the soil softened, he placed the seed into the earth and let it be covered slowly. His spirit was stretched to the limit. Success or failure? A moment later, a faint reward light orb shimmered up from the patch of soil. A prompt bloomed before his eyes. You have successfully planted the guardian tree. You can obtain the reward, Defense against the Dark Arts Insight Improvement, Bronze level. After the guardian tree matures, the reward will upgrade to Defense against the Dark Arts Insight Improvement, Silver level, Slight Dark Arts Resistance, Black Iron level. Relief flooded Xiao'er's mind. He had done it. The planting had passed its final stage. Now he only needed to brew the holy tree potion and water the seed regularly. After a while, the guardian tree would mature. A great sense of accomplishment filled him. He had planted high-reward things before, the 50 and piranha algae, both higher-level rewards, but those weren't true measures of his herbology skill. This success meant he had taken a real milestone step in herbology. Considering the time the tree would take to mature, he'd be able to harvest a batch of rewards by the end of the first school year at the latest. By then, his defense against the dark arts and dark arts resistance would improve significantly. Ha! Ha! He laughed out loud, but only briefly. The effort had drained him utterly. He hadn't felt this sleepy in years. Once the tension dropped, he actually fell asleep standing up in the greenhouse. The night was deep, the moon bright as water. A figure hurried toward the greenhouse. Professor Pomona Sprout. She'd come for herbs to treat the boils Quirrell had gotten from the giant devil's snare. The best time to brew the antidote was at night. When she opened the greenhouse door, she saw Xiao'er in the test field, and her face went pale with worry. "This child," she muttered. "It's this late, and he's still here." She hurried over. "Xiao'er, don't stay here. Go back and rest." Xiao'er didn't respond. She tapped him gently, and he collapsed into the test plot. She nearly had a heart attack, but a light snore escaped him. Pomona exhaled in relief. How had he gotten so exhausted? This was the most drained she had ever seen him. She glanced toward where he'd been standing and felt a sacred magic blooming under the soil. Shock spread across her face. "This is—" She stood there stunned, her heart racing. Then she seemed to let out a sound between a sob and a laugh. "The Sprout family. There's a successor. My Xiao'er really has the makings of a legend." She carefully carried Xiao'er into the greenhouse lounge and wiped the dirt from his face. "As for Quirrell's herbs, I can't leave Xiao'er now. What if he catches a cold? Let Professor Quirrell suffer a bit. I'll bear the blame for missing the treatment window." On a hospital bed in the medical ward, Quirrell had his eyes closed and was silently reporting his progress to Lord Voldemort. Voldemort's voice was cold and sharp. "So you mean during the time you were asleep, you didn't even get past the first obstacle guarding the Philosopher's Stone?" the voice said. "Today you were tricked by a trap set by the Weasley brothers. Quirrell, you have disappointed me." Quirrell shivered and hastily explained. "Master, I have thought of a way past the Cerberus. Xiao'er Sprout, that kid must be half giant. I can find an opportunity to turn him to me, have him handle the Cerberus, and then I can enter the subsequent levels." Voldemort snorted, thinking of Hagrid and how he'd been blamed back in his school days. "So another half-giant has come to Hogwarts after all these years? The magical world grows filthy again." He didn't oppose Quirrell's plan. Half-giants were easy to exploit. Quirrell felt the change in Voldemort's tone and relaxed a little. The bites from the biting cabbage and the itching left by the devil's snare twisted Quirrell's face. He wanted to scratch more than anything, but he dared not touch the back of his head where Voldemort was lodged. He could only bear it. "Why is that woman Sprout so slow?" he gritted out. "Wasn't she going to get herbs for me? Why isn't she back yet? The best time to treat this is almost over." Outside the ward, Snape, who had been enduring Quirrell's stench, frowned. His temper grew short. He was certain Quirrell had a problem, and he suspected Dumbledore was pretending ignorance just to keep playing house with the boy savior. Dumbledore had even told Snape to hurry and cure Quirrell so Quirrell's progress wouldn't be delayed. "I don't know what's holding Pomona up," Snape said coldly. I'll go and brew the potion in the greenhouse. He left at once. In the ward, before Quirrell could speak, Voldemort sounded approving. Severus has gone. There shouldn't be a problem. He's always been capable. Quirrell felt an odd sting. Snape had switched sides to Dumbledore, and yet Voldemort still praised him. I am your man, he thought bitterly. Determined to make himself indispensable to the Dark Lord, Quirrell vowed to handle Ciel as soon as he could move. He wouldn't worry about Snape now. When Voldemort returned, he would prove who the most competent servant was. Snape arrived at the greenhouse and found Professor Sprout harvesting herbs. He frowned. Pomona, those aren't the herbs needed to treat the giant devil's snare. What are you doing? Quirrell's best window for treatment is almost gone. If you miss it, he'll be immobile for several more days. Seeing Snape, Pomona brightened. Severus, you came just in time. Ciel had a breakthrough in herbology, but it drained him completely. He fell asleep standing up. I want to brew something to restore his energy and improve his sleep. Since you're here, please help me. Snape was taken aback. He hurried to where Ciel lay asleep, pale and exhausted. He'd never seen the usually vigorous Ciel like this. For a moment he hesitated, remembering how Ciel had cut his own finger without flinching to treat a Cerberus bite. Thinking of Quirrell's state, Snape's lips twitched and he made a decision. It won't hurt to let him suffer a bit longer. Call Madame Pomfrey too. Then Snape threw himself into brewing the restorative potion for Ciel. All night in the ward, Quirrell endured a year's worth of pain and itch. From night to the first light of dawn, and then until the sun slanted into the ward, there was no sign of Professor Sprout or Snape. Even Madame Pomfrey, who usually brought pain relief and anti-itch salves, did not come. Quirrell sat on the bed and ranted. No. Didn't you say you'd be back soon? Didn't you say you'd treat me? Where are the people? At last, desperate, Quirrell begged Voldemort for help. Master, Pomona and Severus are simply too unreliable. Can you help me? If I recover sooner, I can execute the plan sooner. Voldemort's reply was immediate and cold. It's Dumbledore. It must be that old man. A test he arranged. I could help you with dark arts, but it would likely be detected by him. That insidious old man will not be fooled. I will not fall for it. Quirrell felt despair wash over him. Then what should I do, Master? Voldemort's voice softened strangely, unusually encouraging. Then you can only suffer a while longer. Just endure it. Oh, and I'm going to sleep. You also bear my share for me. The voice vanished. Quirrell stared blankly at the ceiling, utterly baffled. 93. Ascension, Rupture, Potion. After successfully planting the guardian tree, Ciel slept like a stone. He had no sense of how long he lay unconscious. When he finally opened his eyes, he found himself in a hospital bed. Bright sunlight streamed through the window. Is it dawn? Have I slept until morning? A tired but familiar voice answered. Ciel, you're finally awake? You've been asleep for almost 3 days. 3 days. Ciel bolted upright. In all his years, he had never slept that long. With his legendary life, he could go days without rest and still be fine. He only needed a little downtime to recover. Planting the guardian tree had drained him mentally, but 3 whole days? It didn't add up. Professor Sprout let him stew a moment, then urged him to pay attention to how he felt. How do you feel? A little? Better than usual? Ciel's features changed. A wave of unprecedented lightness and comfort flowed through his body. He felt completely refreshed. He glanced at his status panel, and his pupils widened. Before, his magic perception enhancement showed only a faint silver sheen with a hint of gold after the water enhancement blessing. Now, even though he hadn't entered water enhancement, nearly half of that silver luster had turned to gold. His magic perception had improved significantly. It was the kind of gain comparable to harvesting a batch of goldfish vine. Professor Sprout smiled. Can you feel it? Your magical perception has strengthened. She finally told him what had happened. When you passed out, Severus suggested brewing a potion to let you sleep a bit longer. It would be very beneficial for your body, especially your magic perception. She sighed. Severus really bled for this. He used a large part of his rare stores. Hearing that, Ciel felt a stab of gratitude and guilt. A potion that could boost magic perception was practically a disguised increase in magical talent, extremely valuable. Even though he'd patched Snape up before, He now owed the potions master a major favor. He looked at Professor Sprout's tired, red-rimmed eyes. "Aunt, how long have you been awake? You look exhausted." Sprout waved him off with a smile. "I'm fine. When I'm tending plants, I often don't sleep for 3 days straight. I can manage. Besides, I was only weary for a short while. That's why I fell asleep." "But you should rest properly," Ciel urged. Her eyes softened. "I worry about you too much. If you ever feel anything off, you call me immediately." After a few more admonitions, she left the ward but paused in the doorway. "By the way, while you were asleep, a lot of your friends came to see you. I kept them out." She winked. "Neville, Harry, and Hannah, Susan, Hermione, they all came." She blinked at him. "Seeing you spend every day in the greenhouse, I didn't realize you were so friendly with the girls. Any prospects? Tell your aunt. I can arrange things in herbology class. You have at least 3 herbology sessions a week. Plenty of chances. I could even set up a house mixer with Ravenclaw. They have quite a few beauties. Cho Chang is only a year older than you. I can talk to Professor Flitwick, set you up for a dance." Ciel's cheek twitched. Cho Chang? He could see why she was admired, but right now his mind was full of trees, not romances. Before he could respond, Hermione's voice cut in from the doorway. "Professor, is Ciel awake?" Sprout, uncharacteristically mischievous, leaned over and mouthed at Ciel, then left humming a tune. Hermione hurried in, relief written across her face. "I was so worried when I heard you passed out. I wanted to go to the potions classroom to complain. You helped me so much, Ciel." Ciel waved a hand and asked, "How are things in Gryffindor now? Is it better?" Hermione brightened. "Yes, finally I have friends. I'm not alone on the house staircase anymore. I had a lot of misunderstandings about Harry and Ron. I thought they were lazy, but they've been staying up late studying. They might not have improved much yet, but they're trying. I was too hard on them before. Things are better between us." Ciel nodded. Fate, as always, pulled people together in its own time. He happened to notice 2 figures peeking around the doorframe. Harry and Ron, stop eavesdropping and come in. A moment later, they shuffled into the ward, sheepish smiles plastered on their faces. Ciel looked at the 3 of them and felt a twinge of foreboding. "You didn't come here just to visit me, did you?" They exchanged looks. Hermione stepped forward, her expression suddenly grave. "We did come to see you, but there's something else. During the Quidditch match, Harry's broom went out of control. That couldn't have been an accident. Someone was casting a dark curse to kill him. I saw Snape staring at Harry and chanting. He must be working with Dumbledore and deceiving everyone." "Ciel, Snape is dangerous. We want you to look into what he's doing, but please be careful." Ciel listened without the shock they expected. He seemed almost bemused, which made Hermione fluster. "Ciel, I saw him myself. He was chanting at Harry." Ciel leaned back and smiled faintly. "I don't doubt what you saw, but why assume that chanting meant harm? Maybe someone else cast the curse, and Snape was trying to save Harry." Harry bristled. "Impossible. Snape's up to something. I saw his leg wound from a Cerberus bite the morning of the match. The Cerberus guards something important. Snape must have broken in and later tried to harm Harry." Ciel met their indignation with calm. "Professor Snape is one of the 4 heads of house. If there's anything in Hogwarts that needs guarding, the heads would be involved. It seems likelier he was trying to stop whoever set that trap and was bitten by the Cerberus accidentally." He paused. "Besides, I already knew about the bite. I was the one who treated his wound before the match." The 3 went silent. Ron, red-faced with anger, exploded. "So you're on Snape's side? We thought you were one of us. I knew it, standing up for that gloomy, horrible." Before he could finish, Ciel pointed his wand and said, "Leva Corpus." The world spun for Ron. Within an instant, he was swung up and hanging upside down from the ceiling. Ciel's voice was cold. "Ron Weasley, Harry, Hermione, don't make baseless accusations or take dangerous risks because of them. But never insult Professor Snape in front of me again. To me, he is a respected teacher. Remember this. Students of our house don't betray or question the people we stand by. That's not our way." The trio trembled under his stare. Ciel then flicked his hand and murmured something. "Golden Bell Landing." And Ron dropped, crashing to the floor, gasping and furious. He stormed out, muttering, "Told you, he's not one of us. We shouldn't have bothered him." Harry and Hermione followed at once, disappointed and bewildered. Xiaer felt nothing about their departure. He had no need to fawn over the original story's protagonists. They were still immature, best kept at a distance until they grew more steady. Behind a corridor pillar nearby, a black-robed figure had overheard everything. Severus Snape emerged slowly. He had heard the trio's suspicions and Xiaer's defense. He snorted inwardly at the trio's conviction. James's son, equally foolish. But he hadn't expected Xiaer to defend him so fiercely. He lingered in the corridor, a tangle of regret, shame, and a pain that cut deep. After a long moment, he entered the ward with heavy steps. "Since you're recovered, don't dally," he said without preamble. "Go to the potions classroom. I'm going to test you. I want to see if you remembered what I taught you last time." He added sharply, "If your guardian tree doesn't receive irrigation with the holy tree potion soon, it will be of no use against the dark arts." Following Snape, I returned to the potions classroom, a place I hadn't stood in for a long time. Before I could even let myself feel sentimental, a cauldron and an array of potion-making tools were set before me. Snape's voice was cold. "I don't have time for you to linger," he said. "Get on with it." "Mange potion," he added. I didn't mind his tone. Instead, I looked at the cauldron, anticipation stirring. The last time I attempted the mange potion using Snape's new method, I failed several times. The magic was too intricate. But my magic perception had improved again, and I had platinum-grade night vision to help. Maybe this time would be different. "Professor," I asked, "could you close the curtains?" Snape paused, puzzled for a heartbeat, then flicked his wand. Heavy curtains dropped, and the room went black. He didn't bother with Lumos. He could sense the subtlest magical fluctuations without sight. He closed his eyes, letting me work. In the sudden dark, my vision became incredibly sharp. Points of magical light appeared in my perception. I noticed several porcupine quills intended for the potion were of poor quality. Their magical light was sparse. I understood at once this was part of Snape's test. I swapped them out without fuss. Even with his eyes shut, Snape showed the faintest curl of satisfaction at the corner of his mouth. "Treat ingredients carefully," he instructed, his voice like gravel. "This is the first step to mastery in herbology. Any potions master must ensure even the most basic components are in proper condition before brewing." He wasn't one for long lectures, but he drilled the lesson in anyway. As the cauldron began to boil, I added ingredients with the practiced precision of someone who had rehearsed it in his head a dozen times. The chaotic magic began to harmonize. Snape opened his eyes. A tiny point of light, like Lumos, flared and showed the mange potion clear in the pot. "Professor," I said, "I'm done." Snape didn't bother to peer at the cauldron. Instead, he scrutinized me, then nodded almost imperceptibly and offered two words, as sparing as ever. "Not bad." He produced another set of ingredients, far more numerous this time. "Unicorn horn powder, sacred magic," he narrated. "Moon petal root, cool, pure magic. These are all you need for the holy tree potion. I'll demonstrate it once. Watch closely." Snape moved with deliberate slowness. He processed each ingredient to the right state and placed them into the cauldron with perfect timing. It looked like ordinary work, something a first year could mimic, but to my eyes, every micro-motion had meaning. The way he placed an herb a hair's breadth later than expected, the exact tempo of stirring, everything felt natural, as if it couldn't be otherwise. A silver-white potion formed, exuding sacred magic and a faint grassy aroma. "This is the holy tree potion," I murmured. He handed me another batch of ingredients. "From now on, it's up to you." I took a deep breath and began. The holy tree potion was markedly more difficult than the mange. Even with my improved perception and night vision, it was a struggle. An hour later, the cauldron held not a silver-white brew, but a grayish-white liquid, only faintly charged with sacred magic. Snape said nothing, no praise, no scorn. He checked his watch. 10 minutes. Think about what you did wrong. I thought hard. After 10 minutes, he handed me a fresh set. I tried again. The second attempt failed as well, only the color faded slightly. He repeated the same curt instruction. 10 minutes. Reflect. Continue. We went on until the bell rang. Snape ended the lesson with, "Continue tonight." As he left, I caught myself thanking him. "Professor, thank you." He snorted, but his steps were a little lighter. Left alone with the failed brews, I shook my head. Brewing the holy tree potion properly would take time. It wasn't something I could master in one sitting. But Quirrell pressured me. Quirrell had been subdued, yes, but only temporarily. He'd slept for 3 days. His condition would improve soon. Devil's snare or not, the effect wouldn't last forever. I needed to find a way to prolong Quirrell's incapacitation, or I would have to be on constant guard at night, which would ruin my efficiency. I mulled over options until evening and after Snape's second demonstration. I dismissed repeating the same trick. Quirrell wasn't a fool. He'd be on high alert now. In the worst case, I told myself I'd stop going out alone. Even trips to the greenhouses I could make with my aunt to avoid being out after dark. It would be less efficient, but safer than always expecting an ambush. Just as I prepared to try the holy tree potion again with the remaining ingredients, hurried footsteps and a very loud meow rang down the corridor. Filch's voice shouting, "Weasley brothers, you caused such a mess and you're out at night?" Fred and George barreled down the hall, breathless, chased by Filch and Madame Norris. They were unlucky lately, blamed for the prank on Professor Quirrell, punished by McGonagall, and their dorm life turned into polishing the trophy room until it shone. Tonight they'd found a chance to sneak off, only to be hunted down. They were almost caught until they saw the potions classroom door open. I couldn't let them be nabbed for my mistake. They had taken the fall for me. "Come in," I called, and they ducked inside, grateful. They barely had time to hide when Filch skidded up, hand outstretched. He stopped short when he realized it wasn't the Weasleys but me. "Mr. Sprout?" he sniffed. "Yes," I said. "You're out late, Mr. Filch. Must be hard work." He glared. "Aren't you looking for those 2 Weasleys?" "This is the potions classroom, Slytherin territory. Gryffindors hardly ever come here. Why would they?" I offered, helping him piece his assumption together. "If you don't believe me, search the corners. I'll grind. But be careful. Professor Snape just finished an experiment and hasn't put everything away. You shouldn't touch anything, or Professor Snape will be furious." Filch hesitated at the mention of Snape, then grumbled. "All right, those 2 must have slipped to another floor through a secret passage, but I'll get them today." When Filch left, Fred and George crawled out, full of relief and gratitude. "Char, you saved us," they breathed. "If Filch had caught us, McGonagall would have killed us." They fumed about whoever had really pranked Quirrell, how it landed them in trouble and got Quirrell hospitalized. "If I find who did it, I'll smash a dung bomb in his face," George vowed. I suggested caution. "You should lie low for a while. The professors might keep suspecting you." Both brothers immediately scoffed in unison. "No sneaking out at night? Never. What kind of Gryffindor are we if we stop sneaking out?" Still, they worried about clearing their names. "Maybe we should visit Professor Quirrell," Fred said. "Make him understand, explain it wasn't us. We could bring him a tonic to help him recover," George added. "If he gets better, he might believe us." Their eyes turned to me and to the cauldron. They peered at the grayish-white liquid, curiosity sparking. "What's that? We didn't learn this in first year." "It's not in the textbook," I explained. "It's a special herbology potion. And no, I failed at brewing it. It should have had a lot of holy magic, but here it's only faint." The Weasleys' faces lit up. "Wait, holy magic?" Fred said. "Does that mean it's useful against dark creatures? Vampires, reanimated things, those are dark creatures, right? If Professor Quirrell put this on the back of his head, he wouldn't have to wear that garlic-smelling turban anymore." George nodded eagerly. "Way better than garlic, isn't it? Maybe then he'll believe this prank really wasn't our doing." Their hope was contagious. Without hesitation, I handed them every failed batch I had. "Take them. If you need more, come back. I have to brew this every day." They took the bottles like treasure, full of gratitude. "If Quirrell sees this, he'll be happy. Maybe he'll tell McGonagall to stop blaming us." The next morning, Quirrell lay in the infirmary, still itching and in pain. It'd been 3 days and nothing had eased. He was miserable when McGonagall came in, leading Fred and George by the hand with a large bottle of grayish-white potion. "Quirrell, settle down," she said. "The Weasleys are prone to pranks, yes, but I docked Gryffindor heavily and punished them. They've brought you a gift. I checked it. It's not a prank. It's a useful potion." Fred and George pushed the bottle forward. "It's holy tree potion," they said, a little too eager. "It was a failed batch, but it still has holy magic. Internally, it's good for the body. Applied externally, it deters dark creatures. Try rubbing some on the back of your head, Professor. Quirrell's face went white. Rub it on the Dark Lord's face? He wanted to scream. Do these Gryffindor brats wish him dead? But a voice in his mind, Lord Voldemort's voice, whispered that it was Dumbledore's trick, a test, and that he must not refuse. Quirrell trembled. Master? He thought into the dark. What should we do? Smear it, Voldemort hissed. So under McGonagall's and the Weasleys' eyes, Quirrell cautiously dabbed a little of the potion, reached into his turban, and rubbed it on the back of his head. The moment the potion touched his skin, it felt like slamming a wound with alcohol, only 10 times worse. He cried out in a raw, searing scream. The Weasleys watched, anxious. Professor, how is it? Are you all right? Quirrell forced his face into a smile and clipped, Wonderful, so comfortable. The words were torn through grit. It's very soothing, this potion. Their faces melted into relief. Brilliant. We'll bring you a bottle every day until you recover, they promised. McGonagall nodded. Give them a chance to prove themselves. Quirrell's jaw twitched, but Voldemort's voice thundered in his head, cursing Dumbledore. There was nothing to do but agree. Quirrell swallowed and managed. All right, thank you. Days slipped by. Snow piled around Hogwarts. A cold wind bit through the corridors. I stood by a window, watching the white sweep the grounds. Less than 2 weeks left. Christmas was coming. 95. Limit, approach, harvest. Christmas was approaching, and with it the first academic year Ciel had been given at Hogwarts had quietly passed its halfway point. A little wistfulness rose in him. In his previous life, when he'd stayed up late watching the experimental fields and reading novels, he'd read a lot of Harry Potter fanfics. There were plenty of protagonists who managed to crush Voldemort and Dumbledore before even starting school. Those who couldn't defeat a pompous bully in the first semester were rare. Compared with those heroes, his current strength felt disgracefully weak. He shook his head and exhaled white breath into the cold air. He hadn't wasted a day recently. He'd been training steadily, and that was enough, for now. He would keep taking one step at a time until the distance closed. The melancholy passed quickly. He returned his attention to the present and grew serious. Quirrell's injuries had been prolonged for a week by the botched Holy Tree potion. Defense against the dark arts classes had been suspended for that extra week, but the class resumed tomorrow. That meant Quirrell would be discharged from the hospital wing today. It seemed the Weasley boys' assistance had only been enough to stretch things out one more week. But that was enough. A light flashed in Ciel's eyes as he checked his system panel. Because he'd been brewing the Holy Tree potion all week, his training in magic perception had been very effective. On the magic perception enhancement readout, the golden segment was brighter than before and now filled nearly 4/5 of the bar. In the last 2 days, though, he'd noticed the returns from training were tapering off. The gold tier still looked far away. He understood why. His mediocre magical aptitude set a ceiling the exercises could only push him so far toward. It was like bodybuilding. Some people gain muscle easily, others hardly budge no matter how hard they train. Talent wasn't everything. The system could help. The batch of goldfish vine I planted should have matured under the troll's catalysis, he thought. Once I harvest those, the gold tier magic perception boost should come naturally. And Hagrid's been searching for troll settlements for me. Food is scarce in the snow. Trolls leave more traces when they forage. If I can tame even a small troll group, my perception should jump again. With that, Ciel left the castle toward Hagrid's hut. On the library corridor, however, he ran into 3 familiar figures, Harry, Hermione, and Ron. They'd obviously just come out of the library, tired from long research, and were still discussing their findings when Harry abruptly coughed and the conversation died. Hermione looked apologetic. Ron looked sullen, still angry about being restrained with Incarcerus earlier. But remembering how badly Malfoy had been treated when Ciel had taught him a lesson, Ron didn't retort. Ciel bit back a small smile. Of course he knew what they'd been looking for. Nicholas Flamel. Hogwarts didn't teach alchemy, and if it had, Hermione would have already known the basics. Alchemy was unavoidable in any discussion of Flamel, but it had been removed from the curriculum years ago because the failure rate was so high. He'd asked Snape about it while learning potions and some higher-level theory. Some ancient alchemical texts like the Emerald Tablet and the collection of secret meanings tucked among the Half-Blood Prince's notes had opened his eyes to old magical theory. Curious, he'd even asked, "Professor, since alchemy is so important to magical theory and you're so familiar with texts like the Emerald Tablet, why did you specialize in potions rather than alchemy?" Snape had dodged the question with a grumble and a sarcastic example. "When you draw an alchemical circle, the quill runs out of ink or the parchment is wrong," he'd muttered. Ciel had understood immediately. Even Snape had tried alchemy and failed. Real alchemical artifacts were rare for a reason. The heads of houses were envious of the extinguisher Dumbledore had made. With Ciel's own aptitude, alchemy was a distant dream. For now, herbology and potions would keep him busy for years. Out of sight of the trio, Ciel continued toward Hagrid's. The trio's voices faded. Ron muttered, "Have you noticed? He's been getting close to Snape lately. I bet Snape bought him off. Look, that's the way to Hagrid's hut. Maybe he's cozying up to Hagrid to get ahead." Harry frowned. "But Hagrid trusts him. I told Hagrid. He got angry. I'm worried Snape will use Ciel to get through Hagrid's door." Hermione defended him. "Don't be so negative. Ciel isn't what you're imagining." Ron scoffed and then, after a pause, grumbled, "I wanted fresh air, but now we need to get back to work. We have to find out who Nicholas Flamel is before Snape and Ciel do." In the hospital wing, Quirrell looked pale as he faced Madame Pomfrey. She frowned over his charts. "The wounds from the biting cabbage and the after-effects of the giant devil's snare have basically healed, Professor Quirrell. You can be discharged. But your body is much weaker than before. Are you sure you don't need a few more days to recuperate?" Quirrell's reaction was immediate and panicked. He shook his head violently. "Absolutely not." For more than a week, he'd endured the Weasley boys' daily administration of the failed potion. Though the Holy Tree potion had been a failure, it still contained a fair amount of sacred magic. For an ordinary wizard, it had benefits and could resist certain dark influences. For Quirrell, hosting Lord Voldemort, it was like rubbing salt into open wounds. Every time he was subjected to it, the pain was unbearable. He'd had to pretend everything was fine so he wouldn't arouse Dumbledore's suspicion, and the hatred that bred in him at the thought burned fiercely. "I won't live like this another day," he ground out, teeth clenched. Then, thinking of leaving his students without lessons and of drawing a salary while bedridden, he softened his tone and added, "I've been away from my students for over a week. I can't delay them any longer. I'm not going to stay here while the school pays me. I must return to teaching immediately." Madame Pomfrey's eyes reddened. "Professor Quirrell, you are such a conscientious teacher. Very well, I won't keep you." He rose and drew a breath like a man embracing a new life, but a cold wind made him shiver. The repeated exposure to the potion over the past days had weakened both his body and his magical power. Even Lord Voldemort, clinging to him, had been affected and slipped into a deep sleep to conserve energy. Quirrell felt the limit of their time closing. He had to act quickly. "I must control that little Potter, use him to get past the Cerberus, and take the Philosopher's Stone," he told himself. He knew Potter went to the greenhouses at night. Tonight, he would make his move. Ciel had already reached the area behind Hagrid's hut and was heading toward the field where he'd been cultivating a troll symbiotic plot. He didn't know Quirrell's exact plan, but he could guess. As time ran short, Quirrell would only grow more desperate and bold. Ciel needed to improve fast. He heard the troll's low mumbling, broken and halting, and then saw a flash of orange-red like the tails of goldfish. The batch of over 40 pots of goldfish vine he'd planted had all matured. Orbs of reward light hovered above each pot. Ciel reached out and touched them, harvesting. The light poured into him. A sensation he hadn't felt in a long time swept through his veins. He shut his eyes and listened, the wind and the falling snow, and beneath them, the surge of magical energy. 96. Qualitative change. Success. Beat up Quirrell. Hagrid's hut. In the woods behind it, snowflakes fell softly. Ciel had been waiting here for a long time. His clothes were dusted with accumulated snow, but he stood perfectly still, eyes closed, as if listening to some exquisite, heavenly music. Then, at a certain moment, the strange stirring in his bloodline faded. Cher opened his eyes with a slight look of loss. He shook off the snow. The world seemed brand new. On the system panel, the magic perception enhancement that had been stuck at silver at last changed completely to gold, intense and brilliant. Ciel inhaled deeply. His heartbeat quickened. Lumos. The familiar spell burst from the tip of his wand. Instantly, a distinct sense of breathing and a heartbeat poured from that lumos into Ciel's chest. The countless particles that made up the spell appeared clearly in his mind. This was much more vivid than when his lumos had upgraded to platinum. A realization struck him. Before, my magic perception was holding back my proficiency with lumos, he thought. Now that it's caught up, my platinum-level lumos can be used much more completely. He tested the hypothesis. He tried to make the particles in the lumos synchronize their frequencies as much as possible. Previously, he could only pull a tiny fraction into sync for an instant. Now the limit broke. 2 or 3 times more particles than before obeyed him, locking into the same frequency. The lumos in his hand flared with fierce brightness. A somewhat solid beam of light shot from his wand tip and, reflecting off the snow, illuminated the forest in front of him. Ciel's eyes shone. It wasn't yet the perfect laser-like effect he imagined, all particles at one frequency, but it was a huge improvement. Golden-grade magic perception enhancement, he whispered to himself. Crossing this threshold really matters. A sliver of excitement came to him. He'd been working on the Holy Tree potion for a week and had failed dozens of times. He was always just a hair's breadth from success. At the final moment, the various essences of the ingredients refused to harmonize. It was because his magic perception had been a little lacking. Even with platinum night vision, he couldn't fully grasp the state of the essences in the cauldron. But now, Ciel drew a steadying breath and started walking quickly toward the potions classroom. It should work. On his way back from Hagrid's hut to the castle, a scorching, unmasked gaze descended from the castle tower and made him jump. He looked up through blowing snow and saw Professor Quirrell at a corridor window. That urgent, burning stare was unmistakable. Ciel's chest tightened. If it weren't daytime, Quirrell might have attacked on sight. Then the professor withdrew, vanishing from view. Ciel knew what that meant. Quirrell was waiting for an opportunity, likely after dark. He clenched his hand. He could hide in the dormitory at night or rely on the protection of Snape, Sprout, and others, but that would cut into his nighttime hours for training and tree planting. He could tolerate a lot of things, but he would not tolerate anyone interfering with his tree planting. A cold expression settled on his face. Ciel returned to the common room, picked up his beater's bat, his most destructive physical tool for now, and headed straight to an empty potions classroom. He didn't rush into brewing the Holy Tree potion. First, he carefully washed the cauldron, heating it until every last drop of moisture burned away. He cleaned every tool he would need. It was Snape's lesson. Never underestimate the impact of a trace impurity in a cauldron or on utensils. The more complex the potion, the more catastrophic such impurities could be. Cleaning was also, he'd been taught, a way to clear your mind. As he worked, Ciel let go of his anxiety. His heart became as calm as still water. Quirrell's threat seemed distant. After all the preparations were completed, he began the brew. He added ingredients with different magics into the cauldron and guided the complex reactions inside. Over the past week, he'd had to focus absolutely. Any distraction could ruin the brew. This time, though, he was at ease. Even at the final blending point that had defeated him for a week, the reactions felt under control. With the last stir, a silvery white potion shimmered in the cauldron, emitting a rich, holy aura. Ciel's face broke into an involuntary smile. It wasn't as perfect as Snape's demonstration, but it was a genuine Holy Tree potion, enough to give the guardian tree seedlings optimal growth and imbue those who touched it with resistance against the dark arts. Quirrell had been weakening under the effects of Ciel's failed versions of this potion for a week. Even those imperfect brews had been a burden on him. Ciel's skill was improving, and the holy essence in his potions was getting stronger. With that accumulation, Quirrell should be at his weakest now. Facing a guardian tree irrigated with this potion, even a newly planted sapling, would make Quirrell uncomfortable. Ciel looked at the potion. It should be enough to water 5 seeds for a first dose. He touched his chest where 4 portions of guardian tree material that Professor Sprout had given him still rested. His eyes narrowed. He didn't hesitate. He headed for the greenhouse, where he had originally planted a test seed. 10 days had passed, and there should have been signs of sprouting. But the seed was still motionless. The floating reward orb above it hadn't changed. The lack of holy tree potion had stunted it. Ciel carefully tipped the potion bottle, letting a single silvery drop fall onto the soil. It sank in, and at once the holy essence in the potion was drawn into the seed as if a rainbow were drinking the water. The seed's aura brightened and swept away the half-dead limpness. The reward orb above pulsed and grew. Encouraged, Ciel dripped a dozen more drops. The seed was satisfied. A tender green shoot pierced the soil. Ciel felt a flush of joy. The guardian tree had sprouted. It had passed the fragile seed stage. From now on, it wouldn't die at the slightest turn. While not mature, the sapling could already begin to provide some protection, especially for the planter. The guardian tree carried the magical essence Ciel had infused, so its protection would be stronger for him. He touched the shoot tentatively and felt a warm, holy essence surge through it. It felt like an invisible barrier settling onto his body, a buffer against low-level dark arts power. Ciel's eyes gleamed, his heart eased. He took out the other 4 portions of guardian tree material. Looking at the experimental plot where he had planned to grow luminous mushrooms, he hesitated. Lumos had already reached platinum. To improve it further, he'd need several harvests of luminous mushroom. That wouldn't help him much immediately. The guardian tree, however, would continuously strengthen his defense against the dark arts and his resistance to it. The sooner he planted, the greater the benefits. He decided to give up on the mushrooms for now and use the entire plot for guardian trees. The plot could probably hold at most 15 trees. It wasn't enough. Fortunately, he told himself, after Christmas, Sprout said I could secure a few new plots. Then I can plant more. A strange look passed over his face. If Quirrell keeps failing to break me, he'll follow the book and try to trick Hagrid with a dragon egg after Christmas to get past the 3-headed dog. Given my relationship with Hagrid, borrowing a little dragon blood from a young dragon shouldn't be a problem. Then that other silver-grade reward plant can be planted in batches. I'll have 3 types of silver-grade reward plants: piranha algae, the guardian tree, and that other one. Anticipation rose in him, but he refocused on planting the saplings. There was time left tonight, and he hurried to plant all 4 seeds. By now, his hands were practiced. One by one, he processed and planted the seeds. As dusk deepened into night, he exhaled in relief and joy. All 4 had taken. After watering with the holy tree potion, 4 shoots broke the soil in succession. He could feel the protective layer on his body growing denser. His spells seemed subtly altered by the holy blessing from the seedlings, restraining the dark arts. Even the beater's bat in his hand felt as if it wore a silver sheen. Ciel smiled in satisfaction. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. He wasn't the type to take reckless risks. He preferred steady development and planting. He wouldn't seek danger without certainty. But if anyone interfered with his gardening, they would pay dearly. If Quirrell didn't come, fine. But if Quirrell tried to stop him from gardening at night, Ciel would show him what legendary power really meant. Late that night, a figure in a large scarf slipped out of the castle and headed straight for the greenhouse. Quirrell's urgency mounted. Christmas was almost here, and with professors and many students leaving, it was the perfect time to seize the Philosopher's Stone. He had to gain control over Ciel before then. He crept up to the greenhouse and let out a satisfied breath when he saw lights on inside. Fortunately, that boy stays here late. Otherwise, it would be hard to find such an opportunity, he muttered, thinking of the 2 times Ciel had refused him. This time, he would not use persuasion. 1 Imperio would be enough to make the boy do what he wanted. Quirrell tapped his wand. The greenhouse door creaked open. He stepped inside, wand ready. And then, with a click, all the lights went out as if swallowed by a vortex. Darkness dropped over everything. Quirrell froze. In the dark, Ciel moved like a fish in water. Wearing a transparent water tank on his head to gain the water enhancement effect, he had pushed his status to the absolute maximum. Lumos. The spell he knew better than any other flared. A blinding beam of light, far beyond Quirrell's expectations, suffused with holy essence, blasted into the greenhouse. From pitch black, he was suddenly drenched in harsh white light. Quirrell's eyes felt seared. He couldn't see anything but light. The holy essence within the lumos made him burn with pain. Instinctively, he cast Protego. An invisible shield sprang up, and then an unimaginable force struck it, heavy as a giant's blow, 3 times in succession. Quirrell's charm fractured with a cracking sound. The bat, its force still roaring, landed on him. He heard the sickening crack of ribs breaking, a dozen or more likely shattered. His body flew backward like a kite with severed strings. At that instant, the lights returned. Quirrell, blacking out from pain, lay on the ground and saw Ciel standing over him with a beater's bat, wearing an astonished look. "Professor Quirrell?" Ciel said in surprise. "Why is it you? I thought someone was stealing vegetables. There have been so many thieves lately, I'm cautious. I didn't expect it to be you, Professor. Are you all right?" In a panic, Ciel hurried to his pockets, produced a bottle of potion, and rushed toward Quirrell. "I have a healing potion here. Please bear with it. I'll apply it right away." Quirrell breathed hard, eyes full of gloom and fury. He was just unlucky. As Ciel approached, Quirrell tightened his grip on his wand. He could use the moment when the boy bent over him to seize control. But then Ciel tripped. He stumbled and fell, the bat spinning out of his hand and slamming into Quirrell. A cry escaped Quirrell as his arm cracked. The pain made him scream. The bottle in Ciel's hand flew high into the air. A glob of silvery potion filled with holy essence splattered into Quirrell's open mouth. The taste, a familiar recipe, ripped a look of horror across his face. His expression contorted. Ciel let out a shaky laugh of relief. "Phew, phew," he said, panting. "Professor, this potion will stabilize your injuries. Do you feel better now?" Quirrell managed a strained smile. "Yes, I feel good, really." Then his eyes dimmed, and he passed out. For a moment, a chill filled Ciel's chest, but it was fleeting. He suppressed the urge to do more, and instead pressed the greenhouse emergency button, quietly waiting for the professors to arrive. He replayed the attack in his head. Extinguisher, night vision, water enhancement, lumos, legendary power. Every trick used against an unprepared opponent. He'd used all his trump cards to get Quirrell into this state. If Quirrell hadn't been impatient or already weakened by the week of Holy Tree Potion, things might not have gone so smoothly. If the Protego had held half a second longer, it could have been dangerous. Ciel's magical strength still wasn't enough. If he could already cast Sectum Sempra, Quirrell's shield would be like paper, and it would have been easy. Ciel's heart settled. His gaze flicked to the aquatic plant beds deep in the greenhouse. In the 13 water tanks, 13 enormous reward orbs were nearing harvest. He inhaled. The piranha algae are almost mature, he thought. Even if my raw magical strength isn't high yet, once water enhancement is upgraded, the blessing it brings should be enough to push me to the threshold for Sectum Sempra. Chapter 97, The Essence of Sectum Sempra. Pain. Such pain. The commotion in the greenhouse drew the professors who were patrolling the castle that night. Professor Sprout practically ran over. "What happened? Ciel, are you all right?" Professor McGonagall and Flitwick arrived a step behind. They found Professor Quirrell sprawled unconscious on the ground and stared, astonished and uneasy. All eyes turned to Ciel. He began to explain, using the excuse he had prepared. He had finished the Holy Tree Potion, planted the Guardian Tree, and fearing someone might steal his plants, had accidentally injured Quirrell. "I really didn't mean to." Before he could finish, the professors froze. McGonagall and Flitwick looked stunned. "What? Ciel has already started cultivating a Guardian Tree? He's reached the Holy Tree Potion stage?" They glanced at Professor Sprout in disbelief. "Pomona, why didn't you tell us?" Professor Sprout, unusually proud, smiled with a hint of smugness. "I told you, my Ciel is destined for legend. Cultivating a Guardian Tree in his first year, that's unheard of. He's done more than you can imagine." Snape watched Ciel with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. He had been monitoring Ciel's work with the Holy Tree Potion all week. Ciel's magical perception still seemed lacking. In Snape's estimation, it should have taken at least another 2 weeks before Ciel could succeed. Yet a faint trace of Holy Tree Potion magic in the air confirmed it. Shia had indeed succeeded. Outside the greenhouse, 5 guardian trees had already sprouted in the experimental plot. McGonagall and Flitwick exchanged odd looks. Not easy. Truly not easy. Shia, you'll make an excellent herbologist. Seeing what Shia had accomplished, they could only imagine how much hardship he had endured. The fact that he had stayed in the greenhouse so late was proof enough. For a moment, they were all offering congratulations to both Shia and Professor Sprout. Then someone remembered. Wait, did we forget something? Their gaze fell back to the unconscious Quirrell. Oh no, we were so busy congratulating him, we forgot Professor Quirrell. Will he be all right? Don't worry, Shia. As you said, it was an accident. Even if Professor Quirrell is unconscious now, he'll be pleased when he wakes and learns Hufflepuff has an outstanding student like you. He won't blame you. But when McGonagall examined Quirrell's injuries, she could only shake her head, pity evident in her voice. It's just that defense against the dark arts classes will probably have to wait until after Christmas. Soon after, the professors left, taking Quirrell with them. Shia breathed a small sigh of relief. Quirrell wouldn't be able to teach again until after Christmas. He'd bought himself a buffer. For most students, that extra time might not matter, but for Shia it could mean a qualitative leap. Around Christmas, he had 2 major rewards to harvest, Piranha Algae and Margaret, the latter said to increase magical intensity. With both, his power could rise substantially. But he needed to prepare. He glanced at the system panel. Sectum Sempra, black level, glowed there. Between the semi-real and the semi-illusory, its black sheen was a little deeper than before, but overall the change was slight. Shia brow tightened. He had practiced Sectum Sempra many times, but the only real progress he'd made was in the pruning charm, another cutting spell, whose platinum light was growing clearer, nearly ready to advance to platinum level. Sectum Sempra itself had hardly budged. At this rate, he couldn't tell how long it would take to reach bronze level. He understood the difference between black and bronze. For a profound spell like Sectum Sempra, even one level could mean a huge gulf in power. Where was the problem? He had flipped through the Mixed Blood Prince's notes on Sectum Sempra again and again, and still found no answer. It seemed his only option was to ask the spell's creator. In a low voice, he asked, Professor, is there something about this spell that makes it unsuitable for me to learn? Snape paused and fell silent for a long time. Finally, he sighed, an expression of rare bewilderment, regret, and pain crossing his face. He spoke coldly, but quietly. Shia Sprout, since you insist, I'll tell you plainly. Sectum Sempra is a dark arts spell. All dark arts draw strength from negative emotions. That's their root. Sectum Sempra is no exception. His graduation thesis, ruined, his graduation delayed. Even though he had been reborn, the memory still hurt. The image hit him like a physical blow. Pain, such pain. The loss of a future he had planned, the collapse of hope. On the system panel, above the word Sectum Sempra, the black sheen suddenly intensified far faster than it ever had before. Snape, still shaken from dredging up his own painful memories, felt a shift. His eyes flickered with a new small sadness, then sharpened into alarm. He had sensed something familiar, an aura he knew well. He froze. No, is it that painful? What exactly did you lose? Chapter 98. Progress. First battle. Quidditch watching. Char's face twisted in pain. Snape's own expression softened into a mix of surprise and uncertainty. Char was so young. Where had he learned the agony of losing something important? Then Snape remembered. Anton Dolohov had attacked Char's family. His parents had been killed on the spot. If Char retained any memories from that night, the gut-wrenching pain made sense. Sympathy stirred in Snape, but so did a hot thread of shame. After all, he and Dolohov had once been colleagues. If not for Lily, perhaps he would never have turned to Dumbledore's side. His thoughts surged and then shut down as Snape's cool control returned. "You have an understanding of the pain of loss," he said coldly. "Then what are you standing there for? If the man opposite you were an enemy, he would have killed you many times over while you wallowed in grief. Don't dwell in it. Use it." Char snapped out of his reverie, breath coming quick. Pain and anger still throbbed in his chest. He raised his wand like a blade. Sectum Sempra. The rage focused, took shape, and mixed with his magic, sharper than before, like something that wanted to rip everything apart. The surge flowed down his arm into the wand. For all its violence, Char's magical core was still too weak. The shadowless severing spell did not fully form. Snape watched and shook his head inwardly. Magical power was a hard limit. For a spell of that caliber, Char's raw strength was a real disadvantage. It was a pity. Char didn't notice Snape's disappointment. On the contrary, he brightened. On his system panel, the shadowless severing spell, whose progress had stagnated, suddenly darkened, its black iron sheen growing denser. The single surge of practice had produced more progress than all his previous attempts combined. At this rate, he might push the spell to bronze before Christmas. If the piranha algae rewards finished and he collected the bonuses, Sectum Sempra could become a trump card. The thought set him working with renewed zeal. "Sectum Sempra!" he cried again and again, casting attempt after attempt until Snape finally called him to a stop. Char, about to continue, blinked in puzzlement. "Fool," Snape snapped. "Have I not told you that all dark arts draw on negative emotion? Sectum Sempra is no exception. Practice it so much in a short time, and even a weak influence will accumulate. I will not train a madman who wants the world to suffer and kills without restraint. Otherwise, Pomona will come after me." He produced a small vial and made Char drink. A cold current slid through Char's body as the potion took hold, carrying the hot, stabbing anger away until his mind felt frozen, wrapped in ice. For the next 10 minutes, sensation was numb and distant. When the chill finally lifted, Snape examined him carefully. Satisfied Char had not been mentally corrupted by the spell, he said, "No more practice today. Come back tomorrow." Relief and gratitude eased Char's features. As he left the potions classroom, a small smile tugged at his mouth. Once he truly mastered the shadowless severing spell, he thought, even Quirrell wouldn't escape unscathed. He headed for the greenhouse and settled into the steady, patient work of magical plants. He straightened the algae leaves of the piranha algae to catch the most light, removed weak, shaded leaves from tanks so they wouldn't leach nutrients, and tended the newly planted guardian tree with careful hands. Each hour of work was meticulous. Tending the piranha algae alone took 2 or 3 hours. Professor Sprout had given him 5 more guardian tree saplings after last night, which meant he'd need to brew 1 or 2 holy tree potions almost every day to get them growing robustly. Add classes, charms practice, Quidditch training, and processing potion materials for Snape, and he often didn't finish until past midnight. Where others might have tired of such a relentless schedule, Char felt fulfillment. The reward light sphere above the dozen boxes of piranha algae glowed a little brighter every day, and the progress line on his system panel nudged forward. A week passed in that focused rhythm. On the panel, the shadowless severing spell's black iron luster finally showed a faint bronze glint. The reward sphere over the piranha algae was only a hair's breadth from full. At this rate, the piranha algae should mature tomorrow, Char told himself. When they do, the water's effectiveness will increase and my magical strength will jump. Then I'll actually be able to use the shadowless severing spell. I'll improve faster. Bronze before Christmas is certain. Two sources of good news buoyed him, and he left the greenhouse with light steps for the Quidditch pitch. Snape had suggested Quidditch as a way to blow off the mental strain of practicing dark arts. The speed and physical exertion loosened tense thoughts. Char found it helped. He hadn't been flying long when Cedric Diggory called the team down. That's enough for today. Get some rest. Don't forget, tomorrow's our match against Gryffindor. It's our first match and the last one before Christmas. You don't want to spend the holidays with the regret of a loss, do you? The announcement jolted Char. He'd been so wrapped up in charms and herbology that he'd nearly forgotten the match. Hufflepuff versus Gryffindor, he thought back. In the original timeline, only Gryffindor's matches with Slytherin were fully described, but this year's schedule was a full round robin. Each house played every other house once, and the top two would face off for the season title. That explained how Gryffindor and Slytherin had ended up in the final. Both must have beaten the other houses. Ravenclaw's squad, with many girls and younger players, tended to be weaker in competitive sports, and Hufflepuff usually languished near the bottom. Still, Professor Sprout had high hopes for him. Winning this match would be the best Christmas present he could give her. Char's face hardened with resolve. "Tomorrow we give it everything," he said. The younger Hufflepuffs around him clenched their fists. Usually gentle, they now seemed gripped by the same hunger to win. Their determination steadied Char. That evening in the Gryffindor common room, Harry, Ron, and Hermione turned their attention from searching for Nicholas Flamel to the upcoming match. Ron was loud with excitement. "Harry, you'll teach that scoundrel Char a lesson on the pitch. He's Snape's lackey. Make him run with his tail between his legs." "That was our match-winning play against Slytherin," Hermione murmured, frowning. "Ron, don't say things like that." "It's true, isn't it, Harry?" Ron pressed. Harry's mind drifted, uncomfortably recalling the composed Hufflepuff team he'd seen and Char's remarkable performance. Still, the memory of catching the snitch and the roaring crowd after the Slytherin game steadied him. He tightened his fingers around his knee and muttered, "There's nothing to be afraid of. If I catch the snitch, the game's over. Maybe I can get it right at the start. Shut them out." Ron lapped it up. "Then Char won't be able to lift his head next time he sees us." Hermione, listening to Harry and Ron's confident banter, kept seeing Char's calm, precise manner. She opened her mouth several times to warn Harry against overconfidence, but he wasn't listening. Her unease deepened. Tomorrow, could they really win? Chapter 99, Crushing Victory, Harvesting Piranha Algae. The next morning, the Quidditch pitch was alive with activity. Teachers and students packed the stands despite the falling snow that made everyone shiver. No one wanted to miss the match. Gryffindor had unfurled a huge banner, a golden red lion roaring proudly, while the Hufflepuff side presented a sea of earthy yellow flags. Professor Sprout sat in the front row, eyes fixed on the player's entrance, not blinking. When Char stepped out, gripping his Nimbus 2000 and wearing the Beater's emblem, she suddenly looked very old. Memories of watching her brother play years ago came rushing back, her brother who was gone now, and she wept openly. A shrill whistle cut through the chatter and brooms lifted. Lee Jordan and Professor McGonagall were on commentary duty. Since it wasn't the usual Gryffindor-Slytherin rivalry, Lee's voice was more measured as he described the formations. Gryffindors in their trademark triangular attack. Their three chasers work like clockwork. No one gets through them easily. The Weasley twins as beaters are trouble. Wood's solid in goal. Our new seeker, Harry, is operating independently, searching for the snitch. He's very active. After last match, I think we all saw what he can do. He could find the snitch pretty quickly. He hesitated. But Hufflepuff, this is unusual. They've formed a tight formation centered on Char. Even their seeker, Cedric, hasn't broken from formation. A whole team built around a beater? Can that really work? Before Lee could finish, Harry rocketed away on his nimbus like an arrow. The whole stadium held its breath. Lee's cry went high and loud. "Harry! He's found the snitch! Merlin's beard! He's faster than before! Could it end in under a minute?" Then Hufflepuff moved, but not after the snitch. They angled straight for a bludger. Bludgers, unlike the elusive golden snitch, tended to swarm toward players. Finding one wasn't hard. The crowd wondered what Hufflepuff had in mind. Char dove at the bludger, his bat a blur. The impact sent the bludger screaming through the air like a cannon shot. Harry, who had been closing on the snitch, froze, pale, because that bludger was rocketing toward his path. If he'd kept going, it would have hit him like a cannonball. Forced to check his speed, Harry steadied his nimbus and slowed, and the distance to the snitch widened. "Damn it," he muttered. He'd been sure he could have caught it within 30 seconds, but now his chance evaporated. There are two bludgers in play, and while one had disrupted Harry, Char's formation swept in to strike the other. He swung hard again and sent the second bludger on an arcing path toward Gryffindor's goal, ripping a hole through their defense. Hufflepuff's chasers drove the quaffle through that gap and scored unhindered. 10-0, someone shouted. Hufflepuff scores. Shock rippled across the stands. The Gryffindor side felt the cold of it, Wood's face drained of color. If Hufflepuff kept this up, the difference could balloon beyond recovery, past 150 points, leaving Harry's catch meaningless. The three Gryffindor chasers, Katie, Angelina, and Alicia, bit their lips. "We can't defend," they said. "Then we attack. We fly better than their chasers, and their keeper isn't anything special. If we score, maybe we can stop the gap from widening." They surged forward in their triangular pattern, passing the quaffle and trying to split the Hufflepuffs as they had in the past. But Char simply hurled a bludger and shattered their rhythm. Hufflepuff's players moved as one, stealing the quaffle and turning defense into counterattack. 20-0. Hufflepuff scores. Harry felt the weight of it. He had to act. His thoughts flickered. Cedric was an excellent flyer, but his broom wasn't a Nimbus 2000. Harry could use his broom's superior speed to seize an opening while Char coordinated the bludger play. He waited for the next strike. When Char swung again, Harry saw his chance. Then it vanished. Hufflepuff's keeper flew out with Cedric and locked onto Harry. Whenever a gap opened in Char's line, they used position and teamwork to bar Harry's path. Sometimes chasers abandoned their posts to intercept him. Harry felt boxed in, fighting not just Cedric but the whole team. Where Hufflepuff's individual flyers were once unremarkable, now they acted as one living thing, crushing Gryffindor's strategies. 30-0, 40-0, Lee's voice trembled. "I've never seen anything like this. Gryffindor is helpless. Merlin's beard, it's 150-0 already." Harry's hope narrowed to a single grim objective. Catch the snitch quickly, for pride if nothing else. He spied a golden flash at the edge of his vision and lunged. But then every Hufflepuff player spread out. Char moved to block the snitch's space, not a foul to obstruct its flight, and Hufflepuff converged, corralling the snitch into a confused pocket of air. Cedric slipped through and plucked the snitch clean from the sky. 300-0, Lee announced. Hufflepuff wins. Gryffindor stood, pale and stunned, as if waking from a nightmare. Harry slid his broom lower in silence. The cockiness he'd had before the match vanished. He wished he could melt into the earth and forget this rout. Then Char did something unexpected. He flew his nimbus over the Hufflepuff stands and hovered before Professor Sprout. He pointed toward the distant library tower, then sped toward it, circling the tower 3 times with his bat raised. The players and crowd alike were puzzled. Harry's face darkened. Isn't that the tower where we had that incident? Had Char meant to flaunt his victory? Professor Sprout's eyes turned wet and red. McGonagall's voice, choked with remembrance, filled the commentary box. "I remember now," she said. "That is the victory salute of a former Hufflepuff beater. Every time he won, he would circle the library tower 3 times so his sister, who was always in herbology and often missed his matches, would know the result. That beater's name was Robin Sprout." Silence fell for a heartbeat. Everyone understood. Char was honoring his uncle. Cedric and the rest of the Hufflepuff team followed him around the tower, circling in unison. Harry felt a blow to the chest. The small, bitter thoughts that had flared up a moment ago vanished under a wave of shame. I should apologize to Char, he thought. But there was no moment to make amends. Char left the pitch hastily after the match, as if called away by something urgent. He didn't linger over the win. He flew straight to the greenhouses and headed for the piranha algae. After last night's care, the reward light orbs were nearly ready, but Char had wanted them to ripen to perfection. Now, one by one, the bright, full orbs came into view, and a fierce light flared in his eyes. "Time's up," he breathed. "Piranha algae, harvest!" Chapter 100, Soaring. Shackles collapse, sectum sempra. As Char reached out to touch them, 13 full reward orbs poured into him. Prompts flashed across the system panel. You have successfully cultivated piranha algae mutated. You have received the reward, Water Boost. You have received the reward, Cutting Charms Enhancement. Char's eyes lit with anticipation. This was his first time receiving a silver-level reward orb directly. Before Hogwarts, he had rarely even seen black iron-level orbs. His legendary gains had come from accumulation. A single silver orb could change everything. What would it do? The orbs flowed into him, and a strange sensation spread through his chest. A sharpness threaded through his magic, honing it until it felt like a blade. "This is," he began, "the effect of Cutting Charms Enhancement," he realized. The Cutting Charms Enhancement from the cultivation system had sharpened his magic, making it ideal for cutting charms and accelerating his comprehension of them. When he'd first harvested the immature piranha algae, the change had been too faint to notice, and his magic perception then was much weaker. Now he could feel the transformation clearly. In a way, he'd gained even more talent for cutting spells. Char glanced back at the system panel. The label, Cutting Charms Enhancement, which had been glowing with a black iron luster, was rapidly taking on a bronze shine. The bronze thickened fast, then a silver glow replaced it entirely. Cutting Charms Enhancement, promoted. A surge of emotion hit him. How much effort would it normally take to raise an ability from black iron to silver? 13 piranha algae had done it. Harvesting high-tier plants really paid off. Another change rippled across the panel. With Cutting Charms Enhancement now silver, the mastery indicators for the cutting charms he already knew, Pruning Charm and Shadowless Severing Spell, flickered. The platinum sheen on Pruning Charm grew richer, swallowing some of the golden luster. It was now much closer to platinum level. That alone saved him weeks of practice compared to doing it by hand. The shift in Shadowless Severing Spell made him hold his breath. It had been climbing from black iron to bronze, but now the name was suffused with bronze, and even faint specks of silver showed. Char felt exhilarated. With increased magic strength, he could use a bronze to silver level Shadowless Severing Spell, far more powerful than before. The sharpening of his magic faded, replaced by another sensation, a surging, tidal feeling. It was as if the ocean called to him, as if water were his natural element. An urge to dive welled inside him. "This is the Water Boost," he said, eyes fixed on the panel. The changes to Water Boost were far more dramatic than the Cutting Charms update. After all, this was the effect of a silver-level orb. The bronze-level Water Boost began flashing with silver light, then burst into dazzling gold. The gold thickened until hints of platinum started to eat into it. Finally, it stopped after consuming nearly half the gold. Water Boost, Crim level, promoted. It had advanced well toward platinum. Char exhaled. Silver reward orbs were indeed powerful, probably worth nearly 100 black iron orbs. Black iron rewards become less effective as you climb higher. The returns from golden onward dwindle. A silver orb kept paying off until at least platinum to diamond transitions. He resolved to cultivate more silver reward plants when he could. But the true measure of Water Boost required experience. Char took a deep breath and submerged his head in a water tank, letting cold water close over him. He braced for choking, for the harsh burn of water in his lungs, but nothing happened. There was no gasp, no coughing. The water felt like an embrace, supporting him. He could breathe. Oxygen moved into his lungs as freely as it did in air. Movements were lighter. Closing his eyes, he could even sense the currents and ripples as if the water were an extension of his body. "Is this the qualitative change from Water Boost reaching golden level?" he murmured, pleasantly surprised. If so, the water truly was his home ground. More than that, Water Boost brought comprehensive enhancements. On the system panel, the text blurred and shifted. Golden and platinum lights flashed. Underwater boost, golden level, magic perception enhancement, already promoted to golden, strengthened further, brilliant gold laced with faint platinum. Lumos and night vision gleamed more brightly. Pruning charm and shadowless severing spell advanced another notch. Everything improved. Char's attention snapped to magic strength enhancement, black iron level. He'd worked hard on magic perception with the goldfish vine rewards and his own practice, but magic strength had remained a shackle. If his magic strength weren't lacking, he could have used shadowless severing spell long ago, and every charm would be significantly stronger. Then, under his gaze, a sliver of silver flashed across the black iron luster of magic strength enhancement. For an instant, amplified by the effects around it, it reached silver level. Even Char, usually composed, laughed underwater. His shackles had shattered. He tightened his grip on his wand and slashed it like a sword. Magic strength met the requirement. Water boost was active. Cutting charms enhancement was active. He called out the spell, feeling power surge through him. Sectum Sempra.